Chapter 885 The Last Chance. Fei Lei looked at the Shen equipment of an Mo and the others with a heated gaze. The people around him had similar gazes. When the crude and simple gray Shen equipment was completely put on, it gave off a strong feeling of murderousness. Like a battalion that had stepped out of hell. Everyone was knowledgeable, and they could see the extraordinary nature of the Shen equipment. Also, King had created them. Just that alone meant that they were the symbols of glory. After resting for a night, Liang Wei was much better. He glanced at Fei Lei and said with a smile, "Stop yearning. After we earn some victories, King will also forge Shen equipment for us." Fei Lei reluctantly moved his gaze away. He balled his fist and said strongly, "Yes. We have to obtain a great victory. Outcompete these people." They were envious, but they did not feel it was unjust. They had seen the hardship of the main battle force in these past days, and their own fighting was much less. But Liang Wei was not discouraged. After resting, he finally digested the shock of the past few days. After adjusting his mentality, Liang Wei started to shine with his own light. The big fight is still ahead. Liang Wei's eyes narrowed. "Haven't you noticed that the enemies we encounter in the last few days have grown fewer?" "Yes. They're frightened. Who would have expected King to be so strong?" Fei Lei said with humor. He had an expression of pride as though he shared in the glory. Liang Wei nodded. "Yes. King is strong and ferocious in the charge. No one can rival him. If I was the enemy, I will not set up obstacles like this again. I will try to gather more battalions and more power for a final battle with King as soon as possible." Fei Lei shook his head. "No one can stop King." His voice was filled with strong confidence. In these past days, he had seen how Mo had led the battalion to rush through the enemy battalions. He believed that no one would be able to withstand such a charge. Yes, usually they will not be able to stop it. However, what if it is 100,000 people? 200,000 people? Liang Wei asked. Fei Lei stopped breathing. He had never seen 100 or 200,000 people before. He could not imagine it. A 10,000-strong battalion already covered the sky. 100,000, 200,000. How terrifying would the scene be? Just thinking about it made his scalp prickle. Is Northern Plains Ice Mansion so strong? Fei Lei asked uncertainty. Liang Wei's expression was serious. That will be their last chance. If they do not do this, they will not even have a last chance. They have been forced to the precipice. Liang Wei's words were correct. Northern Plains Ice Mansion had been forced to the edge of the cliff. Before this, the reason the opposing faction had grown was because people doubted and distrusted the abilities of the new king. The new king was weak, he was not enough to become king. The rumors had been numerous. While people had been secretly fanning the flames from the shadows, it was still the truth that the new king did not have a strong reputation. However, the sudden advance of 7 days and nights had surpassed people's imagination and completely destroyed the rumors that the new king was weak. The new king was weak? No one would think that ever again. The charge had been furious and powerful, shaking all of Nether Realm. This charge, which could be called a miracle, could rival the old Nether King's battle to unite the Nether Realm. The opposing camp quickly collapsed. No matter what, the new king was the appointed successor by the old Nether King. His legitimacy was undoubted. As long as the new king showed the power of a king, the great majority of factions would choose to support him. In this, Northern Plains Ice Mansion was at an absolute disadvantage. Mo used this method to prove his strength and defend his status as the Nether King. If Hai Xianbing did not quickly change this, her situation would grow increasingly worse. Northern Plains Ice Mansion would become the rebels that tried to challenge the right of the king. This would cause their supporters to quickly abandon them. The old Nether King had ruled Netherrealm for 10 whole years. His influence was enormous. If it wasn't for the fact that the new king was unfamiliar and no one had heard of him, if the successor had been an Mo, the opposing voices would not have been so strong. Only by defeating the new king would Northern Plains Ice Mansion reverse the situation. Should we notify the king? Worry appeared on Fei Lei's face. Liang Wei shook his head. No need, this is most likely King's true intentions. Fei Lei was astounded. Wouldn't this be too much of a risk? King wants to end this in one battle. Liang Wei said gravely. It's too risky. Fei Lei continued to shake his head. I feel that even if the enemy only has 50,000, and the battalions are not too low in quality, we will be in great trouble. Liang Wei did not argue. Fei Lei's speculation was accurate. The two had worked as partners for many years and knew each other well. Fei Lei's talent as a battle general was not outstanding, but he was experienced. He would not have spectacular displays, but he would not make any low-level mistakes. He would not make a mistake in a judgment like this. Based on the power that King showed in these past days, if the enemy had 50,000, they would have a chance to delay them. If the enemy had a well-trained battalion of 100,000, it was likely that they would sink into a bog. If the enemy battalion reached 150,000, they would be at a disadvantage. If the enemy battalion was 200,000, their chances of victory were close to zero. The question now was, could Hai Xianbing gather so many? The battle for the throne of Netherrealm attracted everyone in Netherrealm. This was directly related to their benefits. Under the rule of the old Nether King, they had enjoyed 10 years of peace, and Netherrealm had risen to become one of the strongest powers in the world. They treasured the lives they had now. Due to this, when the old Nether King appointed an unknown person as the successor, this was opposed by almost everyone. Yet a few short days passed, and without realizing it, the tide had turned. 7 days and nights, without a moment of rest, a lightning-fast advance. Under the hoofs of the new king, countless battalions wailed, struggled, and were stomped into the dust. The new king's unparalleled individual power and courageous style immediately increased the number of his supported. Even the old Nether King had not been so powerful in the past. A new legend was being formed right in front of them. This lightning-fast advance that would enter the history books had never occurred in the history of MO before. The new king was so powerful. The Netherrealm MO innately respected the strong. Countless people were in awe of the new king. The MO were so simple. If you were strong enough, they would fear you and submit to you. All of Netherrealm was discussing the legendary lightning advance. The opposing voices seemed to have disappeared in the span of a night. However, those that were more perceptively warily maintained neutrality. They knew that Hai Xianbing had been forced to a precipice, a true precipice. Everyone shuddered at the terrifying power of the new king. Even inside Northern Plains Ice Mansion, many people were filled with terror. A hopelessness started to spread. Hai Xianbing only had one last chance. If she could not stop the new king, after the new king ascended, the first thing he would target would be Northern Plains Ice Mansion. At that time, the authority of the new king would have stabilized, Netherrealm would have submitted, and Hai Xianbing would die. She needed to prove she was stronger than the new king before the new king reached Nether King Palace. The atmosphere in Northern Plains Ice Mansion was extremely low and tense. In a blink, the situation had reversed. They had originally thought that victory was in their grasp, and suddenly, they were at the end of their road. No one had thought that the new king had resolved the situation in such a way. Simple. Brutal. Without any finesse. A few days ago, they had laughed at the new king for being stupid and not knowing his limits, that he was bashing his head against rocks. When the third day came, no one was able to laugh. They knew just how many battalions they had sent on this path. On the 7th day, each of them only felt terror, unparalleled terror. How could someone be so strong? How could they? The mirages of the battles at the front lines were passed back to Northern Plains Ice Mansion. In the images, that inhuman existence caused each person's soul to tremble. No one was a match for one of his attacks. With the power of a single person, he killed an entire battalion. A battalion of tens of thousands was fragile like paper in front of him. He easily passed through them and defeated them in one blow. Even Hai Xianbing was silent when she saw this scene. No one knew her hands that were hidden in her sleeves were imperceptibly trembling. The shock she felt was even stronger. An MO who was on the same level as her appeared dim next to the new king. However, she still noticed that MO's attacks were still so sharp and powerful. Even more powerful than she had imagined. Only today did she know that an MO had hidden his strength. But no one would look at an MO. No one would feel an MO was powerful. Everyone's gaze would only be attracted by one figure. That new king who was like demon ascending to the mortal world. Hai Xianbing had seen the strength of the old Nether King before. In her eyes, the old Nether King was unfathomable. You never knew if the power he showed was his limit. What the new king displayed was a completely different kind of presence. An unprecedented dominance. He moved like a colossus, flattening everything in his path. In front of him, you would unconsciously feel as small as an ant, and could not muster any fighting spirit. "We have mobilized all battalions," Zhu Nanyu said calmly. Hai Xianbing recovered a thread of calmness. She looked with admiration at her trusted general. Of everyone, Zhu Nanyu was the calmest. "How many people?" Her tone was calm. 250,000. Zhu Nanyu's eyes burned. She was also shocked at the new king's power, but when she thought of fighting against such a powerful opponent, she didn't feel any fear, and her blood heated at the idea. Where will the location of the final battle be? Hai Xianbing's terror was pushed away. She was not a normal person, and her tone became determined. "Nether King River." Zhu Nanyu said 3 words. Viciousness flashed through Hai Xianbing's eyes. She suddenly stood and said with steel, "Nether King River." "Good. Then let this battle choose the true Nether King." Everyone stood in unison, the hesitation and fear in their eyes completely disappearing. What replaced those emotions was the belief to die. Final battle. Chapter 886. Presence. Naturally, Northern Plains Ice Mansion could not conceal such a large-scale mobilization of its battalions. Hai Xianbing had not planned to conceal it. At this point, both sides were fighting based on their pure strength. There wasn't any subtlety or stratagem to speak of. At this time, there was no meaning in keeping trump cards. For both sides, at least in this battle, there was no difference between their positions. They were both fighting with their backs to the wall. Hai Xianbing gathered all the battalions that she could move, including all the battalions from Eastern Nether Mansion that had joined her, and those factions that had sided with Northern Plains Ice Mansion early on. At this time, many of these factions felt extremely bitter. They had originally thought that the new king would not be able to match Hai Xianbing, who knew that the new king was more powerful than they had imagined. But at this point, they would not be allowed to retreat. If Hai Xianbing was defeated, they would be killed as well. Due to this, their resolve to fight was unshakable. They were fighting to survive. Hai Xianbing hoped to survive. The remaining members of Eastern Nether Mansion hoped to survive. They hoped to survive. More and more battalions departed for Nether King River. In the history of the MO, never had such a large battle occurred. Similarly, such a powerful and domineering advance had occurred before. The battalions rushed over from all directions. The mood of Nether Realm was tense. Hai Xianbing had set up the main command tent on the banks of the Nether River. The battalions hurriedly gathered from all over. "Nether Lord." A middle-aged person bowed respectfully to Hai Xianbing. Behind him was a well-trained battalion. Each member of this battalion had a verdant green leaf at the center of their foreheads. Their expressions were cold, and gave off a powerful presence. They were the famed Forest Roaming Clan Battalion. The Forest Roaming Clan lived deep in the forest and rarely interacted with the outside world. However, they were great fighters, strong and famous. Hai Xianbing had once saved the life of the previous leader of the Forest Roaming Clan, and had a great favor owed to her. No one had known of this relationship. She thought of it as a trump card and had been unwilling to use it. But at this time, she did not hesitate in using this trump card. "Thank you." Hai Xianbing showed a gentle smile. Hai Xianbing was tall, possessed a pair of blue eyes, and had fine and white skin. She was authoritative and gave people the feeling of being an icy beauty. When she smiled now, it was like a warm spring wind. This middle-aged person was Manjun, and the present leader of the Forest Roaming Clan, as well as the son of the past leader. He had the most leaves on his forehead, 3, and he gave off a savage presence like that of a wild beast. Manjun was not of many words. After the greeting, he moved to the side. Zhu Nanyu moved forward and started to arrange where the Forest Roaming Clan would set up camp. Hai Xianbing was relieved that the Forest Roaming Clan could arrive in time. Manjun had brought along 10,000 of the Forest Roaming Clan elite. This battalion was powerful, and were on par with the strongest battalions of Northern Plains Ice Mansion. Few knew just how many factions Hai Xianbing had recruited and maintained good relationship with over the years. They could only see an endless stream of battalions continue to advance towards Nether King River. The battalions surrounding Hai Xianbing's tent grew in number. It's the 74th Battalion. As this was said, the little shop exploded into conversation. This struggle over the control of the Nether Realm had reached the final battle. It attracted the attention of every citizen of Nether Realm. No Nether Realm MO was able to ignore the matter. The word king had a holy meaning among the MO. Without realizing it, people's acceptance of the new king increased. From the conversations in the little shop, it could be seen that there were more supporters of the new king. Hai Xianbing was a warlord in everyone's eyes, but she did not qualify to be king. If Hai Xianbing qualified to become king, why hadn't the old Nether King chosen her? This was the phrase that many supporters of the new king used. The supporters of the new king increased by the day. That advance over 7 days and nights was too domineering. So domineering that the ferocious MO admired it. It must be very enjoyable to be led by such a domineering king. This thought could not be pushed from the minds of many people. In comparison, Hai Xianbing, who had the most support at the start, was looked down on. Maybe Hai Xianbing had a stronger faction, but she definitely could not be so domineering. As to the identity of the new king, oh, who cared about that now? The old Nether King had also come out of nowhere. Who knew the origins of the old Nether King? Yet the problem now was if the new king could not make it through Hai Xianbing's challenge, he could not ascend to the throne. The old Nether King built the Nether King Palace as the symbol of the king's power. Hai Xianbing hid too deeply. She has so many supporters. Yes. They've surpassed 200,000. Someone quickly gave a precise answer. 220,000. Hiss. Everyone inside the little shop inhaled sharply. A battalion of 220,000. That should cover the ground and the sky, appearing endless in view. The people in the little shop found that their poor imaginations were not enough to imagine such a scene. It will surpass 250,000. We just received news that 9 more battalions are nearing Nether King River. The little shop immediately became silent. A long time later someone murmured, "Is no one helping the new king?" An even longer silence. No one knew. Preparations done. The 2 balls of flame in Gu Wushuang's empty eye sockets flickered. The other 4 turned to look at the Ghost Lord. The Ghost Lord said expressionlessly, "Then depart." "Boss, you will not reconsider?" Sidu couldn't resist asking. Other people might not understand the present situation, but they saw it clearly. Hai Xianbing was prepared to have a final battle with the new king, but in reality, she lost. Even if she won, she could not ascend to the throne. This was strange, but it was true. If she defeated the new king, she would become the most powerful person in Nether Realm. Yet she would not be able to become king. And if the new king beat her, he would become the undoubted king. Presence. Hai Xianbing did not have the presence of a king. Or rather, Hai Xianbing's presence lost completely to the new king's presence. In the view of the Tomb 5 ghosts, they had no need to participate in this final battle. The chances the new king could win this final battle was pitifully low. All the power that Hai Xianbing had worked to accumulate over the years had been invested into this life and death battle. Their intelligence was more accurate. According to their estimates, in the end, Hai Xianbing would gather a battalion that would surpass 300,000. Even they shuddered at this number. Almost half of the elite fighting forces in Nether Realm had been gathered by Hai Xianbing. Her power surpassed all of their expectations. Now, it seemed that Jia Man, who had been called the most ambitious, was lacking compared to this woman. However, Hai Xianbing would have to pay a great price to win against the terrifying power that the new king showed in battle. The expected result was great losses on both sides. This was the best result for the Tomb guards. They believed that the Nether Lord Wuxia also thought the same. They hadn't expected the Ghost Lord would give orders to move out and support the new king. The Tomb Ghost Lord looked expressionlessly at Gu Wushuang and spoke in his unique dissonant voice. "Do you know why King trusted me to guard the 10,000 tombs of the underworld?" "Because I was born here," the Ghost Lord said coolly. "And this is the homeland of King." The Tomb 5 ghosts were dumbstruck. Depart. The gray tomb guards moved out of their base. Not one person was left. It's been too long since I moved. Even my belly is bigger. Wuxia lamented. He had gotten a size bigger. In front of him, his first commander, Ma Wei, stood with a respectful gaze. The entire battalion was prepared to depart. Hi Xianbing, you're so worrisome. You have created such a great fuss. Even my old bones have to act. Wuxia muttered his thoughts. Originally, I hadn't planned on acting. Why fight? When was King's judgment ever wrong? Alright, let's go. I don't know if we will make it in time. Hai Xianbing is insane. Does she want the unified Nether Realm to end? If you want to fight to be king, fight. Don't be like this. Do you know why King did not act against me? Because while I go with the wind, I have a bottom line. As he murmured to himself, he struggled to climb onto the chariot. Let's go. The battalion marched. The news that Hai Xianbing had amassed an army of over 200,000 was proven. The mood of the troop immediately became grave. Liang Wei and an Mo were all skilled battle generals. They knew what this meant. No matter how they calculated, their chances of victory in this battle was minuscule, so minuscule it was insignificant. Regardless of how brave the new king was, how strong his individual power was, he could not win against such a strong army. If King was alone, based on his outstanding individual power, there would be no problems for him to flee safely. But the problem was that this was a final battle from which he could not retreat. They had slowed down. King seemed to be purposefully giving the enemy time to gather. But when the enemy army surpassed 200,000, no one was able to remain calm. They were courageous but not stupid. The difference in power between the two sides was too great. They knew that the reason that they had been unstoppable these past days was because of King's outstanding abilities. A battalion of 200,000. Even King would not have a chance of victory. Liang Wei and an Mo were panicked. Mo did not seem to be in a hurry. Since the battalion stopped, he started to forge. Everyone felt it strange. Why was King forging Shen equipment at such an important time? Even the most powerful Shen equipment, even if it was a Shen device, would be of minimal effect at this time. Yet King ignored the enemy and completely focused on forging. Chapter 887. Facing off, a golden square box floated silently in the flames, and was covered in countless exquisite patterns. The flames disappeared and the gold box flew into Zuomo's hand. The box was exactly the size of Zuomo's palm. A warmth came from the square box. Zuomo felt connected to the box, and this made him smile. Starting from today, you will be called King's Domain. This was the Shen equipment Zuomo was most satisfied with. Ever since he obtained that Shen device nucleus, he had thought about how to forge a Shen equipment for himself. At present he could be called the top forger, but he didn't have his own Shen device, an odd juxtaposition. Normal talismans would immediately collapse in his hands, like the gold crystal sword. An Mo and Liang Wei were panicking like ants set on a fire. They could not understand why King was still forging at such an important time. That dark gold box looked ordinary and had no presence. King, an Mo said urgently. Zuomo nodded towards him and flew onto the copper-boned Netherbird King. We can talk as we travel. An Mo was even more panicked. King, Hai Xianbing has gathered a great army of over 300,000. If we go now, that will only be death. Are you afraid of death? Zuomo asked bluntly. An Mo stilled. He hadn't thought that King would ask this. He answered seriously. This subordinate is not afraid of death, but of a death without meaning. Yes. Zuomo nodded. Under the bronze mask, no expression could be seen. He said coolly, depart. King. An Mo panicked. King, the Tomb Guards and Nether Lord Wuxia's battalion is hurrying over. How about waiting for them? Liang Wei said. We won't wait. I have limited time. Zuomo said coolly and then flew into the sky. An Mo and Liang Wei stared at each other. They couldn't understand what was going on with King. If they went now, they would die without a doubt. 300,000. They didn't believe that King would not be able to understand this. But King still insisted on doing so. Did King have some trump card? They had discussed this before, but no matter how hard they thought, They could not think of any way to defeat an army of 300,000. And Mo gritted his teeth. At worst, we will die together with King. He got onto his Mo steed after he spoke, and then chased after Mo. It is so curious, Liang Wei murmured. He was almost sure now that King definitely had other plans. But he could not guess. What were King's other plans? The King's horn immediately moved as well. Along the way, they did not encounter any more obstacles. The path was unusually smooth. Hai Xianbing had realized the mistake of her previous strategy. Her delay tactic had created the new king's legendary advance, and pushed the new king's reputation to an astounding height. Without any obstacles, Zuomo's group moved quickly. There were scouts set up along the road. The mission of these scouts was to keep track of the new king's troops. These scouts were not all Hai Xianbing's subordinates. All of Netherrealm was paying close attention to this final battle. When Mo once again led his troops to advance like before, countless factions were shocked. Even an ignorant person knew Hai Xianbing had set up a great net up ahead. An army of 300,000. That was almost half of Netherrealm's elite battalions. This was a power that made people tremble. No one could win. Using force against force was the stupidest choice. In many people's opinions, the new king should step back, avoid Hai Xianbing's forces and go around them. Such a large army was all the power that Hai Xianbing had gathered for many years, but it could not be maintained for long. The new king had the support of the old Nether king. Now that he showed the people of Netherrealm his power and strength, his situation was much better than Hai Xianbing. The new king only needed to avoid Hai Xianbing, delay for a while, and Hai Xianbing's army of 300,000 would quickly collapse. That was the strategic method. But the new king rashly advanced towards Nether King River like a moth to a flame. Almost everyone saw his predicted outcome. Even more people felt that the new king was a brute with courage but no skill. The new king would die. Sorrow spread among the people. After the victorious 7-day advance, they had thought that the new king would be like the old Nether king and be an unrivaled hero. But now, they thought he was only a brute. If the new king died, Hai Xianbing did not qualify to become king, and the Nether realm would once again become leaderless. This was the greatest sorrow. For 10 years, they had lived a peaceful life. No battle. Their lives were calm. Nether realm was united. The direction the king's banner pointed was the direction they advanced in. Look at 100 Savage Realm. That place was so chaotic and filled with endless battle. The major factions warred with each other, and people died every day. Low spirits and bewilderment spread in Nether realm. Was an era truly about to end? Was 10 years of peace all they would have? He's charging towards here? Hai Xianbing stilled and asked instinctively. Did the Tomb guards and Yuzhou already arrive? No. Zhu Nenyu's eyes flashed with puzzlement. Strange. Hai Xianbing pondered this. He doesn't appear like a person without brains. Zhu Nenyu didn't speak, but she agreed. How could a person that forced them to such a state, and had grabbed the only chance to resolve the situation when he was surrounded by enemies, be a person without brains? It was the opposite. Zhu Nenyu saw decisiveness, intelligence, bravery and hardiness from that person. She had followed Hai Xianbing from childhood, and they were like sisters. This bond was the only reason she was willing to be enemies with such a person. The other definitely had other plans. He has to have other plans. Hai Xianbing felt uneasy, like an invisible pressure weighing on her mind. She could not understand the enemy's actions at all. Maybe there are spies? Zhu Nenyu reminded. You are right. Hai Xianbing was startled. You have to prepare for that. Zhu Nenyu looked in shock at Hai Xianbing. She had never seen the Netherlord so panicked before. In her mind, the Netherlord was always calm and composed. Now she was panicking just because of one poorly understood move that the enemy had made. The pressure the enemy gave the Netherlord was so strong. The shock that Zhu Nenyu felt could be imagined. The scouts reported at a rapid pace, departing and landing constantly, to report of the enemy's position. Report. The enemy is estimated to be a day's travel away. Report. The enemy is accelerating. Estimated arrival is in 12 hours. Report. 4 hours. As the enemy came closer to Nether King River, the atmosphere suddenly grew tense. The pressure of the impending battle caused the entire army to tense. Everyone became nervous. Even those battle generals that had been through hundreds of battles had stern faces and threads of worry. The other was clearly only 2 battalions, and not even 10,000 people. But for some reason, an invisible yet great pressure was on each person's mind. The other's unusual action caused each person's nerves to be on edge. The enemy was not unknown. He had proven his strength. The more unusual it was, the more people were wary. The army of 300,000 prepared to face a great enemy. The sounds gradually disappeared. They unconsciously closed their mouths. They instinctively gripped their ammo weapons. And the mood was unusually nervous and strict. When a group of black dots appeared in the distance, everyone's hearts jumped. They've come. The army shifted and the roar of the battle generals came in waves. Be alert. Prepare to fight. Be prepared. Do not slack off at the crucial time. The little black dots arrived with a strangely quick speed. In a blink, they felt their visions darken and the enemy was already close to them. The enemy were clearly not even 10,000 in number. But when they advanced at such a high speed, it made people feel as though there were tens of thousands roaring and charging at them. Everyone's hearts uncontrollably shook. Was this the flood of metal that no one could stop for 7 days and nights? Seeing the enemy about to step into their attack range, every battle general's expression became stern and nervous. They waited to attack as the other stepped into their attack range. The enemy suddenly stopped. Stopped without any warning. From a fast charge to a sudden stop. There was no transition between the 2 states and it was so uncomfortable that people wanted to spit blood. They finally saw the person at the front of the group. Swordsmanship looked coldly at the enemies in front of him. In reality, this was the first time he saw a battalion of 300,000 gathered together. The battalions were packed together and stretched into the distance. It caused people to feel weak and powerless. But Swordsmanship didn't feel this way. He sat motionlessly on the back of the copper-boned nether bird king. Even his gaze didn't change. It was still cold and emotionless. Hai Xian Bing. The cold and aloof voice was clear in each person's ears. Compared to the previous panic, Hai Xian Bing calmed down now. She walked out fearlessly. Completely outfitted in armor, Hai Xian Bing seemed to have a martial bearing. At this time, she finally showed the glory and mannerism of a nether lord. She held a long blue sword, her long hair flying in the wind. Her beautiful features did not seem to be of the mortal realm. The decisiveness and intelligence she showed made people trust her. She did not dodge Swordsmanship's gaze, but she did not want to verbally spar with Swordsmanship. She said, "No need to waste words. Let's fight." Hai Xian Bing's eyes suddenly gave off a sharp light. She raised the long sword in her hand, her murderous deep shout echoing in the air. "In the name of Nether Realm." At this time Hai Xian Bing shone like a star. In the name of Nether Realm. Everyone was motivated by her. All of the nervousness disappeared in this moment. Their blood boiled and their spirits rose. The army of 300,000 roared together, the waves of sound filling the surroundings. Hai Xian Bing suddenly had a feeling, the matter was done. The morale of the battalions had reached a peak. When the morale of 300,000 rose, no one would be able to reverse all this. The person wearing the bronze mask on the other side suddenly stood up. He stood on the back of the copper-boned netherbird king, as though he was standing above the clouds. He looked down from high up. He seemed to be looking at all life below. The cold gaze was filled with disdain. The voice was not loud but could be heard over the entire field. The tsunami of cheers and shouts suddenly stopped. "You, how do you qualify to invoke the name of the Nether Realm?" Chapter 888. When did I allow you to use the name of Nether Realm? The cold words were without any emotion. Yet these words were like a basin of icy cold water that was poured over the 300,000. The fire that had just started to burn in their minds were immediately extinguished. The person wearing the mask looked differently at them, as though they were just ants in his eyes. Terrible. Many people's expressions became ugly. Of them, the great majority of them had been famed for many years. When had they been dismissed like this before? They unconsciously balled their fists, their tendons bulging. Zuomo's next words caused these experts that felt humiliated to lose their mind. When did I allow you to use the name of Netherrealm? The cold and aloof tone seemed to be describing an ordinary matter. However, the undisguised dominance and imperiousness was like a wild and sharp cold wind that swept across everyone's minds. Who do you think you are? A sudden shout came from the army. A figure like that of a wild beast suddenly charged like lightning towards Zuomo in the sky. A powerful presence that was like a raging wave swept towards Zuomo Xiaoji, one of Hai Xian Bing's commanders, and the strongest of the 4 commanders of Northern Plains Ice Mansion. Of all the commanders in Northern Plains Ice Mansion, he was an extreme outlier. When people reached such a level of strength, there were rarely any that did not know how to lead battle formations. It was just a matter of skill level. Xiaoji didn't understand any battle formations. He was obsessed with personal strength, but due to this, his individual strength was powerful and only second to Hai Xian Bing in Northern Plains Ice Mansion. He had a fiery temper and wasn't afraid of anything. Zuomo's words immediately set him off. Boom. The furious killing energy swept out. Midair, the air around Xiaoji twisted. His body suddenly swelled and black smoke rose out of his body. An astounding presence quickly strengthened rapidly in the black smoke. There seemed to be a terrifying monster that was being formed inside the black smoke. Soon an enormous monster appeared in people's view. Hiss. Inhales of shock came in unison from the 300,000. This monster was too large. It stood in the air like a mountain. Just the pressure from the massive size was enough for people to lose their spirit. The monster was covered in rich and deep-colored tattoos. Its eyes were like 2 bottomless black holes. Its 4 limbs were short but strong. Its body slightly arched. Its mouth was slightly open, and each fang was shrouded in thick black smoke. Its tail was over 10 li long. When it moved in the air, it caused twisters. And Mo's expression changed slightly. When this nether beast appeared, it gave him a strong feeling of danger. Xiaoji was not this strong. This was in Mo's first reaction. The power that Xiaoji showed right now matched his. Soon Mo's expression completely changed. The words flashed through his mind. A kamikaze warrior. Not good. If an expert of this level disregarded injury and death, the danger they posed would become terrifying. He hadn't thought that Xiaoji was willing to die for Hai Xian Bing. This woman. An Mo gritted his teeth and was about to move forward. Of King's subordinates, he was the only one that was a match for Xiaoji. And Mo's eyes flashed with fire. As though he knew what an Mo was thinking, Zuomo raised an arm. An Mo noticed King's signal and stilled. He had followed King for these few weeks and was familiar with King's signals. There was only one meaning of this signal. King was indicating that an Mo should not move forward. What did King want to do? King was slightly puzzled. Did King want to personally fight? He trusted that King would not have a problem facing Xiaoji based on the power that King had shown. However, if King took a long time with just Xiaoji, then the presence that King had accumulated would disappear. What was most important right now was presence. But an Mo was disciplined, and he knew from the experience of the past days that King was definitely not a rash person. Many of King's seemingly illogical choices and decisions would create a fantastical result in the end. An Mo knew that the results that seemed to be miracles could not be just explained by luck. He stopped moving and suppressed his urgency. He looked curiously at King. He wanted to know how King would defeat this nether beast. Zhu Nanyu looked at the enormous beast in the sky and she was in slightly low spirits. The Nether Lord's move was extremely tricky. The new king had accumulated his presence from the 7-day advance, and his presence was at a peak. Using Xiaoji against an Mo, or the new king would be able to blunt the enemy presence. Zhu Nanyu was almost sure that the Nether Lord didn't even hope that Xiaoji would defeat the other. She only asked that Xiaoji would reduce the other's presence by delaying the new king or an Mo. If the other's presence stopped, their momentum would decrease, and they could be ground to death by the 300,000 army. For this delay, the Nether King even sacrificed such a strong expert. This was like playing chess. While Zhu Nanyu felt that 300,000 was enough, but facing the unfathomable and mysterious new king, the Nether Lord was still cautious. In order to increase the chances of victory, she could pay any price. The pressure this person gave the Nether Lord was too great. Zhu Nanyu and Xiaoji were not close, but they were both commanders of Northern Plains Ice Mansion. They were usually on good terms. Thinking that she would never see Xiaoji again, her spirits fell. But she quickly threw these emotions to the back of her mind, and her gaze became calm again. Xiaoji was enough to make trouble for the enemy. Zuomo's gaze was as cold as usual. The enormous beast in front of him did not cause his gaze to change. He looked on with indifference. He treated the enormous beast just as he had the 300,000-strong army. What no one knew was that Zuomo's lips was curved into a cold smile behind his mask. He was too familiar with the desolate and vast presence that the enormous beast gave off. A wasteland beast. This enormous beast wasn't some nether beast. It was a wasteland beast. While its appearance was completely different compared to the wasteland beast Zuomo's archaic wasteland sacrificial art summoned, their presences were similar. What was different was this wasteland beast had a tinge of death to it. This was a wasteland beast that had died. Such a pity. Zuomo felt great pity. This wasteland beast still had such presence after death. How ferocious would it have been when it was alive? Roar. The nether wasteland beast suddenly opened its mouth and howled. A presence that caused people to tremble exploded. It crouched slightly, its bottomless eyes stared at Zuomo, and it appeared to prepare to pounce. Zuomo's gaze turned cold. He didn't even fear a true wasteland beast right now, much less a dead wasteland beast. The other had used nether shen power to refine this wasteland beast. However, Zuomo saw with a glance that the refinement was not complete. This was expected. The wasteland beast had been the king of all ancient beasts. Even if it was dead, someone that was not god level would not be able to refine it completely. A wasteland beast that was not completely forged still had remnants of their instincts from their life. These instincts were the greatest enemy to those that tried to forge it. This person that rushed out was burning shen power to suppress the remaining instincts of the wasteland beast. Pity he underestimated the instincts of a wasteland beast. Archaic wasteland sacrificial art moved on his fingertips. However, this time, what flickered on his fingers were threads of shen power. A dot of dim light flew out of Zuomo's fingertip and entered the body of the wasteland beast. The wasteland beast's body was so large. Compared to the enormous body, the speck of light was insignificant and seemed absurd. Did the new Nether King think to defeat such a powerful and big entity, using that little bit of shen power? Was his mind normal? In order to face this terrifying monstrosity, one needed to use power that could upend the seas and tear down mountains. What was that rice-sized grain of light? Many people had dismissive expressions. However, in the sky, Hai Xianbing's heart suddenly rose. A bad feeling rose from her mind. She was the closest, yet she did not understand what the mask-wearing person had constructed. A move that even she could not understand. Her heart sank slightly, but she did not act. Xiaoji's intelligence was not good, but his fighting strength was undoubted. Yet the next scene caused everyone to lose their ability to speak. They gaped with wide eyes, their expressions frozen on their faces. The mountainous wasteland beast trembled and spasmed violently. Threads of black smoke rose from its body. It trembled like dice, and ripples visible to the naked eye formed in the air. Err. Angry howls that carried great pain spread like blasts of wind. The ripples spread even faster. They contained great power and swept the entire battle formation. The Mo who were slightly weaker felt their heads turn dizzy and their bodies wavered. This awoke them out of their astonishment. They were astounded. What was happening? Ah! Pain screams suddenly came out of the wasteland beast. The faces of the people of Northern Plains Ice Mansion changed. Xiaoji. This was Xiaoji's voice. Xiaoji's wailing and screaming was filled with pain as though he was enduring great torture. Soon, the screams weakened and then stopped. The mountainous beast stopped shaking. Tiny light suddenly glimmered in the bottomless black eyes. It suddenly roared, its four limbs pushing off to dive towards Zuomo. Boom. The enormous body was like the attack of thunder. The feeling of momentum it produced was terrifying. It was like a mountain coming down that nothing could stop. King, careful! An Mo exclaimed. His expression changed drastically. This nether beast was faster than he imagined. Zuemo did not seem to hear the warning. His body did not move. The wasteland beast seemed to appear out of thin air in front of him. Such an enormous thing appearing without any warning caused people's hearts to stop beating. It was so close to Zuemo. Its eyes were only 3 zhang away from Zuemo. Boom! The sound of a sonic boom and the savage wind smashed towards Zuemo. The upright figure on the back of the copper-bone nether bird king did not move. Only that snowy white hair was blown up by the savage wave of air. In front of the wasteland beast's mountainous body, Zuemo was minuscule. Suddenly, the wasteland beast bowed. That man that seemed to be carved from stone finally moved. He raised his foot and stepped onto the nose of the wasteland beast. The nose of the wasteland beast was like a wide mountain path leading to its head. Walking along the wasteland beast's nose was like walking along a mountain path. He moved upwards. The battlefield was silent, but communicated an intimidating power. Complete silence. When he walked onto the top of the wasteland beast's head and stopped, he turned and looked towards the battalion of 300,000. The crouched wasteland beast also stood up at the same time. The 300,000-strong battalion suddenly grew smaller and smaller in his eyes. The wasteland beast took him higher. His vision was vaster than it had ever been. The strong wind in the air blew his snowy white hair about. He looked down on the enemies. The bronze mask was still cold and indifferent, just like the voice that echoed in the air. When did I permit you to use the name of Nether Realm? Chapter 889. Absolute Power. A deathly silence. No one spoke. The army of 300,000 were like 300,000 wooden puppets. They couldn't make any sound at all. They looked into the sky at that seemingly untouchable figure that stood upright, his white hair blowing in the wind. Suddenly, people had a feeling. The wasteland beast was tamed under his heel. Was like the world under his heel. The cold and indifferent voice came from that faraway place and spread through all of Nether Realm. This final battle would determine the future of Nether Realm, and was watched by all of the people in Nether Realm. Countless people were transmitting what was happening here as mirages. Xianbing, who had thought she had victory in her grasp, had not removed these people. She wanted these people to watch how the glorious new king would fall. She wanted to defeat the new king in front of all of Nether Realm. Only then could she ascend to the throne. Xianbing had no time to regret it. She was also shocked by everything that had happened. That pair of ocean blue eyes stared woodenly out of her face. Only until that imperious voice concluded as though he was giving judgment. I am the Nether King. Only I, in all of Nether Realm, can use the name of Nether Realm. Do not qualify. The voice held no warmth. Even now his voice did not rise. There was no anger, no explosiveness, no emotion. But this emotionless voice caused people to feel terrified. Compared to the cold voice that did not rise, the presence of the man atop the wasteland beast started to rise. For some reason, everyone felt relieved. That strange terror they felt lessened greatly. Were they finally going to start to fight? Good. At worst, they would die. They completely didn't realize the change in their mentality. Only a few noticed this change. Their expressions became terrible. The presence that the new king had created was so stunning that the confidence and morale of their side had decreased greatly. Originally, no matter what the new king did, it should not have happened. But Xiaoji's explosive rush seemed to have been planned, and had been flipped to build another stage for the new king. But everyone knew that this had not been planned beforehand. Even such a terrifying beast was prostrated under the feet of the new king. They had seen the entire process with their own eyes. The unfathomable presence of the king left an indomitable imprint on their minds. Was this the presence of a king? In the past, they didn't believe it. They thought that if they could use a mass numbers to challenge and defeat the so-called king. But after seeing this scene, their resolve wavered. Zhu Nanyu shouted, "Be alert, we have 300,000 people." This shout was like a swat to the head that caused many to regain clarity. Yes. They were 300,000. No matter how strong he was. Even if he had the enormous beast. So what? 300,000. This was a force that was enough to change all of Nether Realm. How could it fail against one person? How was it possible? Their faces glowed again, their spirits recovering. The miracle in front of them, This legend, this unfathomably deep new king was only to add to the significance of their achievement. However, their expressions soon became serious. Such astounding presence. The new king's presence surpassed the presence of Xiaoji back when he had been burning Shen power. This was not strange. In everyone's minds, the new king's individual power was just below the old Nether king. He was a man that created the miracle of the 7-day charge by his own power. Yet what shocked them was that his presence was still rising at an astounding speed. He was like a fire burning hotter and brighter. Ripples swept outwards like surging waves. Everywhere they passed, people's minds trembled. They could not avoid the terrifying presence. His presence continued to rise. Seriousness became fear. Fear became terror. They looked up at the figure up high. They could not see clearly. The powerful presence that the new king released caused the air around him to twist violently. There seemed to be complex turbulent flows around him surging chaotically. What was even more astonishing was the area of turbulence was still expanding. Air. The wasteland beast suddenly gave an angry howl. Boom, a muffled sound came through the air. Its mountainous body started to become blurry and twisted. A wave of air carrying powerful presence spread into the surroundings with the wasteland beast as the center. As the two presences mixed together, the world seemed to lose color. The 300,000 people paled. What was even more inconceivable was that the presence of the man on top of the wasteland beast was still rising and showed no signs of slowing. This was impossible. Even a person as calm as Zhu Nanyu could not maintain her composure. She looked in shock at the sky. This is impossible, she murmured. In the sky, the presence given off by that figure surpassed the limits of a mortal. In this moment, she had a feeling that what was in the sky was not a person, but a burning sun. Was this his true power? How could the power of a mortal reach this level? There were no clouds in the sky, but the sky slowly darkened. Night descended. Crack, crack, crack. The ground cracked. The cracks started to stretch out like wounds in the earth. Even hard granite was like soft biscuits that easily cracked. In a blink, the ground was covered in a spiderweb of cracks. That person's presence was still rising. The terrifying presence weighed on people's minds like a lead cloud. Each person found that they were gradually losing control of their body. Slight numbness was spreading through their bodies. Terror and hopelessness uncontrollably spread through their minds. Only the true experts knew that their bodies were not being controlled. The other's presence was so powerful that their bodies were instinctively protecting themselves. This kind of instinctive self-protection was not in their control. While they understood the cause, they were not relieved at all, but horrified. Just the presence being released was so stunning. Then how strong was he? Was there a person this strong in the world? And Mo was stunned. Waves rippled through his heart. King was so powerful. King hadn't even used a fraction of his strength in the 7-day miracle that people discussed so much. This conclusion caused an Mo to become slightly bewildered. Truthfully, even he was filled with pride at the incomprehensible 7-day advance. In his opinion, this was a miracle that could not be copied. It would never appear again. But when he saw King today, he found how laughable his pride was. He finally learned what King's trump card was. King's trump card was his unimaginable and absolute power. This was King's trump card. King had never thought of using any schemes to resolve Hai Xianbing's rebellion. From the start, King had decided to use absolute power to crush her. No one had thought of it. And Mo had not thought of it. No one could imagine that one person's strength could suppress 300,000. They had never heard of this before. But this scene that almost was impossible was happening right in front of them. And Mo looked dumbly at the man giving off the terrifying presence in the sky. Was this King? The ground was vibrating constantly as though there was a terrifying monster underground that was moving. Suddenly, pop, a stone the size of a fist broke free of the restraints of gravity and slowly floated upwards. It set off a chain reaction. Pieces of rock broke free of the ground and floated towards the sky. Everyone looked at the strange and intimidating scene. The presence of the man on top of the wasteland beast was still rising. Without any signs of slowing down. They only felt terror. Other than terror, there was nothing else. Even Hai Xianbing, The vast and endless presence were like relentless waves that spread outwards. 100 li, 1,000 li, until it covered this entire Jia. At this time, the Nether King River that was at the center seemed to be approaching an apocalyptic level event. Fragments of stone floated in the air like stars. The Nether King River had stopped flowing and was completely solidified. The restless air twisted everything as though it was the center of a whirlwind. Everything within 100 li was completely blurry. Only that cold bronze mask, those indifferent eyes of a deity, were so clear that they reached people's minds. Zuemo opened his hand. There was a square golden box lying in his hand. King's Domain. Zuemo threw King's Domain into the air. King's Domain exploded in a ball of light. The world suddenly calmed down. The whirlwind disappeared. The terrifying presence disappeared. The twisted ripples disappeared. Everyone was situated in the middle of an endless galaxy shunglyphs. All kinds of shunglyphs of different colors. An ocean that was endless. At the center of this shunglyph sea, an enormous golden sun slowly revolved. The sun's surface spat out thick golden flames in a spectacular show. This shunglyph galaxy was so vast that the 300,000 people within it were still small. Silence, a deathly silence. Hai Xianbing's face was ashen and bloodless. She suddenly thought of the battle of the Central Plains from the rumors, God level. The legendary God level. She looked dazedly at this vast and hope-crushing shunglyph galaxy. She suddenly found her ambition was laughable. Her struggles, her plans, all the effort she put in front of the other's absolute power, all of this became the best performance stage, the greatest stepping stone, the magnificent background for the legend of the new king. Her body trembled violently. Her pride cut at her heart and to her bones. Since she had already failed, then she would fail completely. Hai Xianbing suddenly raised her face and showed a sorrowful smile. She suddenly leapt towards the figure on top of the wasteland beast. Chapter 890. Hai Xianbing's death. Zuemo looked indifferently at the charging Hai Xianbing. He was in a strange state at the moment. He felt as if he was a completely different person. He seemed to be possessed. His mind was unusually calm, as though nothing in the world could affect him. He did not panic facing Hai Xianbing's final attack before her death. In the 10 years he wandered the endless void, he had accumulated 10 whole years of ideas and reflection. When his Shun power recovered, the accumulation of the 10 years was like a volcano that had waited a long time and then erupted. He was more powerful now than the Tianhuan Chief Elder had been back then. Also, he had forged a top Shun device like King's Domain. The Chief Elder's shunglyphs had given Zuemo great inspiration. Zuemo was also skilled in shunglyphs as well. In the past, Chief Elder had been more skilled than he was, but now, Zuemo was undoubtedly the most skilled in shunglyphs. In the 10 years of exploring the endless void, he had seen countless shunglyphs, more than Chief Elder had. This shunglyph galaxy was a step beyond Chief Elder's shunglyph sea. This place was completely made from shunglyphs, including the Chief Elder's shunglyphs, and the glyphs from the endless void. There were no seal scripts. Also, Zuemo had a far more heterogeneous knowledge than Chief Elder. For example, his Shun power was the Sun Shun methodology, one of the strongest Shun methodologies of the ancient era. King's Domain combined the best of all he learned. Hai Xianbing was blocked. The one that stopped her was the Black Gold Seal Soldier. At this time, the Black Gold Seal Soldier was completely transformed. His body flashed with armor made from shunglyphs, as though he was wearing a grand costume. These shunglyphs flashed with different colors, some deep blue, some burning red, and some golden yellow. All kinds of light mixed. However, it was not chaotic, but indescribably balanced and beautiful. Under the watchful eyes of hundreds of thousands of spectators, the Black Gold Seal Soldier put in great effort. Born to battle. The authoritative and deep shout was like an ancient war god. His eyes flashed with dark gold light that were intimidating and murderous. His arms were brought together, his fists crossed. The right fist was wrapped by an icy blue shunglyph while the left fist was wrapped in a burning red shunglyph. When the two smashed together, a great and blinding light was created. The shattered icy blue and burning red fragments smashed together like shards of ice and sparks of fire. Whoosh! The two streams of fragments twisted together like two dragons of blue and red that twisted together and leapt towards Hai Xianbing. Hai Xianbing did not dodge. Viciousness flashed through her eyes. A layer of blue light lit up on the blue sword in her hand. She opened her hand and the long sword howled towards the red and blue fragments. Her body suddenly disappeared from the air and immediately appeared at the side of the black gold seal soldier. A glint of cunning flashed through the eyes of the black gold seal soldier. Fortune glyphs appeared around Hai Xianbing the moment she had appeared. The light of the fortune glyphs flowed with red, yellow, green and white rays of light. Each shone on Hai Xianbing. Hai Xianbing felt her body was trapped in a bog. The black gold seal soldier was cunning to start with. After facing the hardships of the past 10 years, he had become the most sensitive of the little ones towards openings and opportunities in battle. Without any hesitation, he charged towards Hai Xianbing. The Shen Glyph Galaxy was mentally connected to Zhua Mo. The black gold seal soldier was like a fish in water in this space. The strength of all of his skills multiplied. He appeared next to Hai Xianbing, raising his fists to throw towards Hai Xianbing. The Shen glyphs on his fists and arms suddenly lit up with blinding light. There seemed to be a flowing ball of light that shot towards Hai Xianbing. Hai Xianbing had the resolve to die and did not dodge. The long sword in her hand pointed in the direction of black gold seal soldier's fist of light. A rice-sized grain of icy blue light lit up at the tip of Hai Xianbing's sword. The blue light suddenly exploded in front of the black gold seal soldier. An extremely cold presence swept out like a windstorm. The black gold seal soldier's expression changed slightly. His charging body twisted without warning and disappeared from his spot. Across the battlefield, blue snowflakes gently floated down. The hexagonal blue snowflakes added a contrasting fragility to the Shen Glyph Galaxy. The icy blue snowflakes spread rapidly through the Shen Glyph Galaxy. Hai Xianbing stood with her sword, her long hair blowing in the wind, as the snowflakes fell around her. Her gaze was as determined as iron as she channeled Shen power into her sword. The wind and snow became even stronger. Under her feet, glowing ice silently spread outwards. In a blink, 1,000 li was sealed in ice. The Shen glyphs that were sealed by ice were dim. The flames of hope once again lit up in the eyes of many people. They saw the hope of victory again from Hai Xianbing's display of power. The black gold seal soldier was angry. He had actually made a mistake in front of so many people. The proud black gold seal soldier howled. The Shen glyph that covered his chest suddenly lit up with red light. At the center of the Shen Glyph Galaxy, that enormous sun that spat out red tongue of fire which shot out a ruler straight line of fire. The burning red line of fire was the thickness of an arm, and as fast as lightning. It immediately reached the black gold seal soldier, and accurately struck the Shen Glyph at the center of his chest. The line of fire entered the Shen Glyph. Viciousness flashed through the black gold seal soldier's eyes. His body bowed slightly, his eyes extremely wide as his cheeks puffed out. Whoosh! The black gold seal soldier spewed forth a stream of red flames. When the red flames landed on the ground, the glacial ice layer quickly melted. The fire inside the black gold seal soldier's stomach seemed to stream endlessly. He maintained his posture as he continued to breathe fire out of his mouth. The bright red flames were like a moving snake which moved as it pleased along the ice layer. The sound of the flames burning masked all other sounds. The endless black void of the sky, the Shen Glyph ocean of stars, the wall of red flames that burned along the ice, the icy blue snowflakes that hadn't even fallen before they were consumed by the flames. These flowing flames did not show any signs of weakening. Hai Xianbing had a calm expression, but she was dispirited inside. She, a netherlord, couldn't even defeat a seal soldier? And she had actually dared to challenge him for the throne. How laughable was this? That dot of cold light had been the ice plains Shen breath that she had harvested from the depths of the northern ice desolate plains. That Shen breath had been an entity of extreme cold. She had spent great effort in forging it, and had thought it could seal all things. She hadn't expected. Was the difference between God level and non-God level so great? She felt extremely bitter. The bright red flames were domineering and burning. It was Shen fire of higher quality than her ice plains Shen breath. The other seal soldier had only Shen fire, and the power of the Shen glyphs to stop the ice plane's ice breath. An attack that she was had to burn her Shen power to release. She accepted her complete defeat. She was suppressed in all aspects. The vast and burning presence that mask-wearing man had been exuding disappeared. His presence, the presence of the wasteland beast, they merged into one with this Shen glyph galaxy. He was nowhere, but seemed to be everywhere. Hai Xianbing felt unspeakably uncomfortable. His presence before had furiously grown as though there was no end. That had stunned her. Now this omnipresent feeling did not make her feel terror but defeated. When there was a large difference, you would be shocked. But when there was such a great difference, it was not so shocking. The other used countless Shen glyphs to transform a Jia. The difference in cultivation was exposed in front of her. The difference in Shen power would not have caused her to lose her resolve. She felt hopeless because of the difference in cultivation. Her burning Shen power continued to flow into her sword. However, the rate that the ice planes spread could not keep up with the speed the other's Shen fire flowed. The bright red flames were as unstoppable as a prairie fire. She really was a failure. She didn't even have the ability to battle with the enemy. When her last thread of Shen power was used up, the ice planes suddenly stopped expanding and were immediately consumed by the flames. A flower of ice appeared at Hai Xianbing's forehead. In a blink, the frost consumed her body. She turned into a lifelike statue of ice. Crack, crack, crack. Countless cracks appeared on the ice statue like a spiderweb. Snap. The ice statue completely shattered into pieces of ice, and were completely consumed by the burning fire that came. A Netherlord, the leader of the 300,000-strong army, Hai Xianbing disappeared completely from the world like this. So simply, so easily. From beginning to end, the new king did not act. Endless darkness, the Shen glyph galaxy, the astounding great presence of the enormous sun. The entire Jia was taken over. Everyone that happened was so unrealistic as though it was a dream. Surrender or die. The cold voice echoed in every person's minds. There was no pride, no happiness, just the same indifferent calmness. Bam! Someone's MO weapon landed on the ground. It caused a chain reaction as the sound of MO weapons being thrown away clattered out. After seeing Hai Xianbing's death, their last bit of spirit to resolve was completely shattered. Zhu Nanyu's face was covered in tears, but she did not shout something like revenge for the Nether Lord. She knew that resisting now would have no meaning except for wasting lives. Beside her, all of the commanders of Northern Plain Ice Mansion had ashen faces. They knew everything was finished. They silently threw away the MO weapons in their hands. No one could stop this person. He alone could kill all of them because he alone could destroy this Jia. But for some reason, even they, while they felt sad, also felt relieved of a great burden. They finally did not have to be enemies against him. This battle caused the reputation of the new king to reach a peak and surpass the old Nether king. Almost all of Nether Realm had seen this astounding battle. No one doubted the new king's qualifications to ascend to the throne. Anyone able to defeat an army of 300,000 alone qualified. After a short silence, the Nether Realm boiled and descended into an unprecedented celebration. God level. Their king was God level. The only God level in the world. Their king was the strongest of the world. All of their unrest was swept away. All of their fear disappeared. The Battle of the Central Plains had shown people how powerful God level was. However, in that battle, the chief elder of Tianhuan that had just entered God level had died, and up until now, no new God level had appeared. But now the Nether King was the first to possess a God level, their king. People started to dream. The Nether Realm would become more prosperous under the leadership of the new king. All the leaders of Nether Realm's various factions were traveling day and night towards Nether King Palace to pay homage to the new king, to be present when he ascended to the throne, and to personally swear their fealty. Countless experts gathered towards Nether King Palace. In the minds of the people of Nether Realm, King was fated to become a legend. Was there anything more exciting than following a ruler like this? The Nether Realm that had been showing signs of unrest, internal discord, and approaching civil war was renewed and filled with vitality. Chapter 891 New King. Old King. After finally completely what he had promised Sure, Zuemo sighed in relief. He hadn't worried too much about succeeding to the throne. With his god-level cultivation, he was already one of the strongest in the world. The matter had gone smoother than he had expected. He had considered what he would do in the worst-case scenario. If he could not get the army of 300,000 to submit, he would lock the entire Jia. Of course, that was the worst-case scenario. This was because these 300,000 were the elite of Netherrealm. If he killed them all, Netherrealm would be greatly weakened. Zuemo did not have anything against killing them, but he did not kill needlessly. Their surrender was the best result. It left the Netherrealm's strength intact. This result was so good it was unexpected. He had to consider the next step. Other than an Mo, Liang Wei, and the others, no one knew his status as the king of Mo Cloud Sea. He realized that this was a great opportunity. Right now he had not thought of how to use this secret. Suddenly, the cheers outside interrupted his thoughts. His mind moved, and everything happening outside appeared in his mind. There were numerous people gathered on both sides of the road. The crowd moved along the road and stretched out endlessly. Where the chariot passed, people fell to their knees. The calls of "All Hail the King" rose up constantly. An Mo and the battalion that accompanied him stood upright with proud expressions. Zuemo was slightly shocked. Even in Mo Cloud Sea, he would not be greeted with such a grandiose parade. Even as founder of Mo Cloud Sea, this was due to the difference in the two cultures. The main members of Mo Cloud Sea were Xiozha. Xiozha usually gathered in sects, and meaning even at the best of times they were not truly united. As a result, Xiozha did not have a king. For the Mo, they were at their most prosperous and strongest when a powerful king appeared. In their hearts, the position of king was sacred. For the majority of Mo, a king was their hope. He was the person that they could follow with their life. The new king's powerful display caused all of Netherrealm to be filled with optimism towards the future. Whenever a strong king appeared among the Mo, it was usually when the Mo were the strongest. When the troops reached the perimeter of Nether King Palace, the palace was surrounded by an ocean of people. The leaders of all the factions from all over Netherrealm, big or small, had gathered here. They became excited when they saw the troops of the new king. Zuemo stepped off of the chariot. An endless sea of people that stretched out before him was shocking. The tsunami of cheers caused every person to uncontrollably tremble. An Mo and the others were extremely excited. They were filled with pride and glory at seeing such a scene. "All hail the king!" Someone shouted. More and more people raised their arms and shouted. The shouts gathered into a flood. Even the ground trembled. "All hail the king! All hail the king!" People shouted at the top of their lungs as though they didn't know exhaustion. Zuemo stood on the chariot. Still wearing the bronze mask, he seemed to be the moon surrounded by the stars and brilliant in his light. 1. He looked around. His gaze swept across people's faces. He saw their hopes towards the future, he saw their reverence of him, he saw the pride and excitement on their faces. Suddenly, something seemed to weigh heavily on his heart. Starting today, he would lead them, he would become their king. He took a breath and swore. "In the name of Nether King, I will protect this land." Only half of Sher's body remained. He heard Zuemo's oath. He knew that Zuemo was making a promise to him. Sher showed an ugly smile. He let go of his last worry. There was only half of his body left. Turning his head, he looked at the empty and large hall. He said to himself, "Let us do one last thing." Sher's presence suddenly erupted. His body released a starry light. The half of his body that remained quickly disappeared. At the same time, 5 familiar presences in 5 corners of Netherrealm shot into the sky. Sher's face had a holy light. There was a small smile at the corner of his lips. He said softly, "Thank you all." The blinding light quickly consumed his body. The light that shot into the sky covered all of Netherrealm. His expression was dignified and stern. "We 6 are willing to use our crippled bodies and incomplete souls to forever guard Netherrealm, abandoning reincarnation, to return to chaos, to pray for peace." Boom! The blinding light instantly swallowed Sher. There were only whispers left in the air. To pray for peace. 6 pillars of light in Netherrealm shot into the sky and disappeared. The large hall was completely empty. Zuomo suddenly raised his head. He felt Shi's presence. To pray for peace. He seemed to whisper by Zuomo's ear, but in a blink, Shi's presence disappeared. Suddenly, a rice-sized dot of light appeared on Zuomo's face. It was cold but filled with Shen power. Countless white dots came down from the sky like a beautiful fall of snow. Someone in the crowd suddenly exclaimed, "This thing can increase Shen power." People immediately became excited. They flew into the air and chased after these dots of light. At the same time, the dots of light came like snow in every jia of Netherrealm. Zuomo's spirits immediately dropped. He had been prepared mentally for Shi's death, but when it truly occurred, Zuomo could not stop grieving. Shi was a unique existence to Zuomo. He had unparalleled power. Of all the experts Zuomo ever saw, Shi stood at the very top, but an expert like this was filled with love towards this land. Zuomo had never felt that kind of deep emotion from anyone else. And in the end, in the eyes of many people, a worldly apparition like this appearing as the new king ascended to the throne proved even more just how extraordinary the new king was. The reign of light continued for 3 days and nights. All of Netherrealm partied wildly for these 3 days and nights. When the figures of 5 people appeared in front of Zuomo could not control his emotions any longer, and his vision blurred. "Young master." Ague sobbed as she charged into Zuomo's arms just like back when they were small children. Zuomo's tears flowed down his face. He couldn't speak. He could only pat Ague's back. After recovering, Ague lost that wooden face. She was a strong person, and she quickly noticed her loss of composure. She was slightly embarrassed and broke free of Zuomo's arms. However, 2 tracks of tears still remained on her face. "Shitty." Weisheng looked at Zuomo with red-rimmed eyes. This man who was like steel was also overwhelmed with emotion. When he awoke and saw the 5 Shenwood coffins and thought of how Shitty had dragged the 5 Shenwood coffins to roam the endless void for 10 years, he could imagine the hardship. Eldest Shixiang. Zuomo was also excited. The two exchanged a hard hug. Luoli stood next to Wali, having manifested into tangibility. Right now he had broken free of the limitation of his technique. Both existing neither a shadow. He was also excited. "Shixiang." Zuomo looked at Luoli and smiled. Now Shitty finally gets his wish and can be together with Wali. Luoli hadn't thought that Zuomo would tease him. His face flushed red. Wali, on the other hand, was not embarrassed. While she still didn't have a smile on her face, she was not as cold as before. "Darren." Zhongru tried to keep his voice calm, but Zuomo still heard the trembling and excitement. Zuomo punched Zhongru and said with a laugh, "Good, good, good." Of everyone, the calmest was Tseng Lianer. She still looked unaffected. When she found Zuomo's gaze land on her, she blinked her eyes and said, "You have already become Nether King. Why don't you become the 100 Savages King?" Zuomo hadn't expected that Tseng Lianer would open with this. He stilled. "The relationship between our 100 Savage Realm and you is closer than that of Nether Realm. It is good that you became the Nether King, but you cannot favor one realm over the other. My father is still in 100 Savage Realm." Tseng Lianer blinked as she spoke. Zuomo's mind refocused. He said with a snicker, "I was thinking about this." Yes, Zuomo had thought about this. Before, Zuomo had thought about how to use his status as Nether King. He thought of 100 Savage Realm. If he used his status as Nether King to attack 100 Savage Realm, the resistance he would encounter would be far lower than if he attacked 100 Savage Realm as Mo Cloud Sea. Because Nether Realm and 100 Savage Realm were both populated by Mo, the people of 100 Savage Realm would not be as resistant to him as the Nether King. But if he attacked 100 Savage Realm as Mo Cloud Sea, it would be easy to cause the Mo to resist. In these past few days, he had pondered the situation of 100 Savage Realm. The Mo Shen Temple was the strongest of 100 Savage Realm. Both the Mo Marshals Alliance and the Heroes Alliance had declined to ally with the Mo Shen Temple, meaning Mo Shen Temple still had a ways to go to unite 100 Savage Realm. For him, this was undoubtedly a great opportunity. The power of Nether Realm had not been significantly damaged in this fight for the throne. If Netherrealm fought against Emotion Temple, the chances of victory were high. Using the authority of the new king to gather all to take down 100 Savage Realm. Even if they just took the Emo Marshals Alliance and Heroes Alliance to squeeze the Emotion Temple's space, that would be beneficial for Netherrealm. Once his status as the king of Emo Cloud Sea was exposed, it would not be so easy to do such a thing. No one would sit by and watch as a titan took form and grew stronger. The Emotion Temple wouldn't, Kunlun wouldn't, and even the Yao wouldn't. They would ally together. Then they would be truly surrounded by enemies. If he fought against 100 Savage Realm using the status of Nether King, that was an internal conflict among the Emo. Kunlun would be wary, but not to the same extent. Once his identity was revealed, the Yao would not interfere. Fighting between Yaoma were rare, and so the Yao would not interfere. Also, Ming Yuyi was still too busy with her own affairs. If they could take down 100 Savage Realm, and he became the king of the Emo, along with Emo Cloud Sea, his strength would be undefeatable. Even Kunlun would become the second power. At worst, he would just take over the Emo Martial Alliance. That way, the Netherrealm's territory would be connected to Emo Cloud Sea, and an enormous faction would form. Also, Zwa Emo still had other contingency plans. Chapter 892, Planning and Movement. Compared to the past, Kunlun was more prosperous and populated. In these years, Kunlun had grown much stronger, and was the strongest in the world. The battle generals, led by Xuedong, they fought on all fronts, and expanded Kunlun's territories greatly. But Xuedong was not in a good mood. The Shidi were all discussing the Battle of Nether King River. The entire world was astonished by the Battle of Nether King River. It was the first time people saw how strong God level was. Even a top battle general like Xuedong couldn't help but feel hopeless when he saw that kind of power. He thought of many methods, but right now, nothing could rival a God level. God level could destroy a Jia and easily move away. Xuedong could not solve this problem. He had calculated, if the development of Shen power increased by the day, and the average level of battalion members increased by 2 power ranks, or they had more than 5 that were pseudo-God level experts, they might be able to match a God level 1. But these two were both implausible. His battalion already had the most accomplished disciples of Kunlun. They presented the strongest of the disciples. Increasing their cultivation by 2 levels would take a decade. And 5 pseudo-God levels were even more implausible. Right now, Kunlun, after more than a decade of cultivation, only possessed 2 pseudo-God levels. When Lin Qian had fled from the Central Plains and returned to Kunlun, he had spoken to Xuedong about the strength of God level. Xuedong had not completely believed him back then. How could the power of one person reach such a terrifying level? Yet after he saw the entire Battle of Nether King River, Xuedong couldn't rest for a few nights. He could not think of any method that would match the new Nether King. They had thought that Netherrealm would fall into chaos for a while, but after seeing the mirage, Xuedong knew that Netherrealm would not descend into chaos. In these past years, he had always thought of Emo Cloud Sea as the enemy. Emo Cloud Sea had expanded rapidly in the past decade. While Xuedong was wary, he was not scared. Kunlun's overall power was far greater than Emo Cloud Sea. The fact that Zwa Emo had disappeared for 10 years was fatal for Emo Cloud Sea. From the intelligence the spies passed along, Emo Cloud Sea's internal politics were becoming more unstable. The conflict between the old and the new factions was increasing by the day. Lil Misgongsun was a strong battle general, but he was not an outstanding ruler. As time moved along, Emo Cloud Sea would gradually split. That would be the time when Kunlun would consume them. In Xuedong's view, Emo Cloud Sea was a fruit that was maturing by the day. When the time came, it would be easily plucked. Suddenly, a Nether King came out of nowhere and was so strong. Xuedong felt strong danger. With the new Nether King's power, he definitely would not be willing to just stay in Netherrealm. As his mind moved, Xuedong's expression immediately became ugly. 100 Savage Realm. If the new Nether King moved, the first would definitely be 100 Savage Realm. Xuedong was a top battle general and knew the intelligence on all the factions. He almost immediately judged that the 100 Savage Realm that was in chaos would not be able to stop the Nether King's advance. The Nether King had a high chance of becoming the first king to unite the Mo in 10,000 years. Shuedong understood the Mo well. If that event really occurred, all of the Mo would become unprecedentedly powerful. The Mo did not like internal conflict. If the old Nether King had not aged, Hai Xianbing would never rebelled. The Mo were the most disciplined of the three races. Their enthusiasm and reverence of the king came from the cultural traditions stretching back to the ancient era. Damn it! The Nether King that united the Mo would become the greatest obstacle to Kunlun uniting the world. At this time, an astounding sword essence suddenly erupted from the back mountain. Shuedong stilled and his mind rang. Eldest Shixiang. He charged out of the room and saw the figure releasing stunning sword essence in the sky. Two words jumped into Shuedong's mind: God level. Lin Qian was out of seclusion. He has God level. The information spread through the Xiuzhe realm under Kunlun's deliberate machination. All of the factions were alarmed. Kunlun was powerful to begin with. Everyone had just seen the power of God level. And now Lin Qian came out of seclusion. Kunlun's news immediately overtook the Nether realm. Unlike Nether realm, Kunlun had been the strongest sect in the world in the last thousands of years. Right now they did not show any signs of decline, but grew even stronger. Now that Lin Qian came out as a God-level expert, it pushed Kunlun to an unprecedented level. Kunlun once again became the faction most likely to unite the world in people's eyes. What was most shocking was Minan announcing that all of South Tianhuan was siding with Kunlun. After Tianhuan had split into North and South Tianhuan, they had continued to decline. However, South Tianhuan that was ruled by Minan still possessed almost half of the original Tianhuan's territories. As Minan joined Kunlun's side, Kunlun's power increased to a stunning level. Kunlun held over 2 realms. And Mo Cloud Sea was shy of 1 realm. Li Xian'er's North Tianhuan had half a realm. The other factions such as Guliang Dao and the 4 minor Diana sects shared half of a realm. Even if the Nether King took over 100 Savage Realm, they would just match Kunlun. They had the strongest god level. They had 3 top battle generals, Shuedong, Muxian, and Minan. They had a territory of 2 realms. Kunlun's top position had taken form. Yang Yuanhao was not in a good mood. Lin Qian become god level, and Minan siding with Kunlun immediately caused the situation to become terrible. Kunlun was truly too powerful, so powerful it was hopeless. Guliang Dao's spirits could not compare to before his losses to Shuedong. While he had worked hard, there was not much improvement. Li Xian'er and the others had fought constantly with Minan these years. They most likely had used up most of their wealth. Minan was most likely in the same situation, so when he heard that Lin Qian had advanced to god level, he did not hesitate in siding with Kunlun. Even Yang Yuanhao had to admit that Minan was a clever character. He had good judgment, and more importantly he could put his face aside. Yang Yuanhao grimed inside. He couldn't do it. The 9 great Diana sects had split, with 5 siding with Kunlun, and the 4 minor Diana sects had not. Yang Yuanhao knew that both he, Guliang Dao, and Li Xian'er didn't have the ability to fight Kunlun. The only one that could match Kunlun for a while was Mo Cloud Sea. The pity was that there still wasn't any news of Zwa. Mo Cloud Sea had serious problems internally. Lin Qian had also reached god level. Yang Yuanhao also concluded in this era that a god-level expert was unstoppable. This really was a problem. Yang Yuanhao rubbed his head with a headache. He could not put his face aside to side with Lin Qian. For some reason he did not like Kunlun's conduct. If only Zuomo was still here. He sighed inside. He suddenly missed that rascally and greedy character. Suddenly, a paper crane appeared in his room. Yang Yuanhao's eyes landed on the paper crane and he stilled. This paper crane seemed familiar. Was this someone he knew? He thought as he reached out. The paper crane flew into his hand. He unfolded the paper crane. A ray of light flew out of the paper crane. Inside the light, a figure appeared. Yang Yuanhao seemed to be struck by lightning. His eyes were wide as he looked in disbelief at the face in the ball of light. Zuomo. This person was still alive. While Zuomo's hair had turned completely white, he still recognized at a glance that this person was Zuomo. Brother Yuanhao, long time no see. Yang Yuanhao was completely stunned. Gu Liangdao was in a daze. There were streaks of white in his hair. He had been defeated soundly by Xue Dong in the fight for Xixian. His hopes of taking over Xixian also had failed. After the war, he had given up a larger portion of the territory than he planned. One was to thank Gong Sun Cha for coming to his aid. The other was because he knew he did not have the strength to manage so many jia. That defeat at Xixian was a far greater blow to him than one could imagine. He had almost completely given up due to that defeat. When he heard the news that Lin Qian had reached god level, and Minan had sided with Kunlun came, his mood quickly became terrible. The situation was worsening. Kunlun was now so strong it seemed hopeless. In front of god-level experts, the so-called forts and defense lines were a joke. And in terms of top-level battle generals, Kunlun had an astounding team. The other factions had more battle generals in terms of numbers, but they fought for themselves. They lacked a person who could unite them. It would be good if Brothers Wamo was still alive. Pity, the heavens envied those with talent. Gu Liangdao took a deep breath. He knew that their situation would become worse and worse until even taking a step back would be difficult. In his view, the final battle for the world would most likely be between Lin Qian and the Nether King. Now it was to see if it was Lin Qian who first united the four realms, or the Nether King to first unite the Yaomo. In Gu Liangdao's eyes, Kunlun had the advantage. Without Brothers Wamo, Cloud Sea would have a difficult time stopping Kunlun in their tracks. Suddenly he raised his head. A paper crane appeared nearby. Gu Liangdao froze where he was as though he had been struck by lightning. This paper crane was from Brothers Wamo. Brothers Wamo was still alive. Gu Liangdao was filled with joy. In this moment, all of the clouds over his mind were swept away. Even the fight against the colossal Kunlun did not seem so hopeless. His hands trembled as he impatiently unfolded the paper crane. That familiar face appeared in front of him. Shitty, don't worry. Wei Sheng's expression was solemn. With us present, we will not allow Kunlun to take one step into Cloud Sea. Luo Li, Li Zhongru, and Xing Liana nodded. They would go back to Cloud Sea as fast as they could. Only a Gui was staying with Zhuo Lin Qian coming out of seclusion, and Minan taking sides immediately caused Cloud Sea to be in a dangerous situation. Once Kunlun finished organizing, they would gather their forces and head for Cloud Sea. I will act with speed on my side, Zhuo said with seriousness. His preparations had finished, and an enormous net was created. Zhuo knew that starting today, they were entering the true final battle. It was time to make their move. Chapter 893. Action. The leaders of the factions of Nether Realm had gathered together in this hall. This was the first time that the Nether King had called a meeting after taking the throne. The ones who came were all the strongest of their region, and held important statuses. This was the largest meeting in the history of Nether Realm. In the era of the old Nether King, there had been no central governance, and a meeting of such scale had never been called. This was the first time many people attended the king's meeting. The large hall of Nether King Palace was completely silent. Everyone sat properly, and the Nether King was seated high upon the throne. They were slightly shocked at being summoned. At the coronation for the Nether King, they had taken turns to swear fealty towards the new king. Everyone was secretly speculating about the content of this meeting. The most plausible conclusion they reached was that it was time to settle the debts. King was likely going to sentence the rebels of Eastern Nether Mansion and Northern Plains Ice Mansion. The mood inside the hall was slightly depressed. People's hearts were in the air. The great majority of them had not publicly supported the new king. If the new king remembered this, then they would not have good days in the future. At this time, each of them were anxious and afraid for themselves. Seeing on the throne, Zhuo looked down at his subordinates. He could clearly see the panic and fear in their eyes. Behind the mask, Zhuo laughed. He had no intentions of carrying out a great purge of his political enemies. This was a once-in-a-thousand-year chance sitting in front of him. How would he waste it on instituting a new political order? The price of a great cleanse would be a long period of instability and internal conflict, resulting in a decrease in power. He slowly spoke, his voice deep and aloof. I have summoned everyone for one matter. Everyone's expressions immediately became nervous. Some people unconsciously straightened, in preparing to invade 100 Savage Realm. After Zhuo said this, it was completely silent. Everyone thought that they had heard it incorrectly. Moments later, the hall exploded. Everyone was stunned by the topic that King had raised. No one had expected that King would plan to attack 100 Savage Realm only a few days after ascending to the throne. This was so great. Zhuo looked at the people below. Their panicked expression had disappeared, and was replaced by joy and excitement. As expected, the Mo liked fighting. Zhuo was slightly startled inside. If this was any other place and he had just ascended to the throne, advisors would urge him to first stabilize his power. However, these people seemed to be even more interested in attacking 100 Savage Realm than Zhuo was. 1. Actually, this was because Zhuo did not understand the previous political situation. After Shur united Nether Realm, all of Nether Realm had hoped to march on 100 Savage Realm. However, Shur had refused their petitions. The reason that Shur had united Nether Realm was because this was his homeland. He had no ambitions towards 100 Savage Realm's territory. But the Nether Realm was filled with excitement and hope towards conquest. They thought that Nether Realm was overwhelmingly strong compared to their opponent, and 100 Savage Realm could not stop them. The time to unite the Mo had arrived. But under Shur's unquestioned authority their ambitions and hopes were suppressed. So when Zhuo threw out the topic, the people exploded. King. The Ghost Nether clan is willing to be the vanguard. The clan leader of the Ghost Nether clan stood up and said excitedly. This seemed to poke the hornet's nest. The Dashi Nether Horse clan is most suitable for being the vanguard. A tall and thin middle-aged person stood up. Please, your Dashi Nether Horse clan is best used as spies. We, the Vajra Rhino clan, are the best to be the vanguard. A large man that was broad-boned and sturdily built came out with a proud expression. The horn on his head flashed with fierce light. No one would concede to the others, and the fighting did not stop. In Zhuo's eyes, this group reminded him of a busy scene from the morning market. A beat later, he recovered. He had originally thought that people would be cautious towards such a serious decision, if not outright opposing it. He hadn't thought it would be a situation like this. This group of people were fighting to be first as though there was a prize to be earned. People shouted, their faces flushed, spit flying. Some people pointed at others' noses and swore. Others appeared as though they were about to push up their sleeves and start to fight. An Mo frowned and then shouted, "You are in front of King." His voice was not loud, but the entire hall immediately quieted. And Mo's status had been high before, and right now he was both loyal to and deeply trusted by King. His authority was second only to King. It seems that people are interested. On the throne, Zhuo looked at the people below. He nodded and then said, "An Mo, I will let you arrange this. Liang Wei, you will assist an Mo." An Mo had the ability, the authority, and the experience. Moreover, he was extremely loyal. He was the best choice. Yes. An Mo responded. Yes. Liang Wei also responded. Zhuo did not give out direct orders. He didn't know any of these people, and wasn't familiar with any of the factions. It would be better to leave this to an Mo. In terms of strength, Nether Realm was much stronger than 100 Savage Realm. As long as they didn't make a fatal mistake, they would win. A honest and open attack was the right path of war. An Mo was an astounding battle general. Maybe he was not as adaptable as Gongsun Cha and Bihan, but he was reliable and would not make rash decisions. Also, there was Liang Wei. While Zhuo had not seen astounding any performances from Liang Wei on their journey, he was the only one other than Gongsun Cha Shidi that had won Pu Yao's praise. Zhuo was filled with anticipation towards Liang Wei's abilities. If Liang Wei had Lil Miss skill, no, even Bihan's skill, Zhuo could die happy. 3 top-level battle generals, they could rival Kunlun. Soon, the news that King had decided to invade 100 Savage Realm spread. All of Nether Realm boiled. An Mo did not fail Zhuo's hopes. He quickly finished organizing and gathering supplies and troops at an astounding speed. The army of 300,000 that had surrendered to Zhuo had been in his control all this time. These 300,000 people were the main force for invading 100 Savage Realm this time. An MO announced that this war was how they would atone for their crimes. They needed to use service to trade for the futures of their clansmen. An army of 300,000. In Mo's view, this army of 300,000 elites was enough. No one in 100 Savage Realm would be able to stop such a large army. But would the other factions tolerate passing over such a good chance to expand? Their actions would create opportunities for others. All of Netherrealm believed that this battle would be likely to be the one to unite the MO. This would be a great battle that would leave a great mark on history. Anyone that missed participating in this would regret it for the rest of their lives. These people almost broke the gates of Mo's resistance. Mo was bothered by their requests, but he knew what these people thought. He immediately spread the word that only the elite of each clan qualified to attend this campaign. Large clans picked the elite members from inside their clan and formed elite battalions to participate. Those little clans didn't have so many elites, but each clan would have a few experts. These experts left their clan grounds and participated as individuals. Zuemo never thought that his decision would end up like this. His personal reputation had been of great effect. Such a great movement could not be concealed. 100 Savage Realm, and all of the world learned that Netherrealm was about to invade 100 Savage Realm. Almost all the elite of Netherrealm had gathered under the Nether King's command. An army of 500,000. It was the largest battalion to appear in thousands of years. All of 100 Savage Realm shook in fear. All the factions were so shocked by this unprecedented battalion that they lost the ability to speak. Even Kuan-Luan received a shock. The entire world feared the Nether King that made such major moves just after ascending to the throne. Kuan-Luan. After entering God level, Lin Qian's presence was even more controlled. At this time, he looked the same as an ordinary person. In front of him, Chao Xian, Shuedong, Mu Xian Minan, and the other higher-ups of Kuan-Luan were gathered together. This Nether King is skilled. An army of 500,000. 100 Savage Realm is in danger. Shuedong scared in wonder. Everyone agreed with this. Lin Qian said, "What does everyone feel about the Nether King's chances of winning?" "A certain win." Shuedong did not hesitate. He and Lin Qian were extremely close, and so he had no restraints. Shuedong was the head battle general of Kuan-Luan. His words carried great weight. Lin Qian's gaze turned towards other people. Mu Xian nodded in agreement. Minan had just joined Kuan-Luan and wanted to demonstrate his abilities. Seeing Lin Qian's gaze turn to him, he said in detail, "An army of 500,000. The first faction will attack are the Mo Martial Alliance and the Heroes Alliance, which are both declining. They may even surrender immediately. The only one that is a threat to the Nether King will be the Mo Shen Temple. However, the difference in power between the two is too great. The Mo Shen Temple will be able to hold out for a while, but definitely not for long. The power of a god level is not for show. The Nether King will not just win, but most likely win quickly." Lin Qian's expression was grave as he sighed. "It seems the Mo uniting cannot be avoided. This is not good news for our Kuan-Luan." Chao Xian also had a similarly serious expression as he said, "This new Nether King is a great enemy to Kuan-Luan. It is likely that our final enemy will be them. Right now we need time. If the Nether King unites the Mo, he won't just have a territory of 2 realms, he will be the king of all Mo. The Mo race is very strange. Once a king appears among them, they will become extremely united." Everyone nodded. Chao Xian continued, "The Nether King that will possess 2 realms will become the strongest faction alongside with Kuan-Luan. Right now, we need to consider what will the Nether King do after uniting the Mo." Shuedong pondered this. There are 2 possible paths. One is attacking Mo Cloud Sea or Guliang Dao. While our territories also border the Mo territories, the possibility that they attack us is not high. The Nether King might not be prepared to fight to the death against us just yet. The other path is to attack the Yao. Yes. Minan nodded. Mo Cloud Sea or Guliang Dan cannot stop the Nether King. They will be the most likely targets, and he will conquer both of them. If this occurs, it will be detrimental to us. The best outcome is if he attacks the Yao. Ming Yuyi is not an easy person to deal with. The best for us is if the two are both wounded. Time. Chao Xin's eyes flashed with cold light. We need to strengthen ourselves during the time the Nether King is uniting the MO. We need to keep our advantage against the Nether King. If we can unite the 4 realm before he completely takes over the 100 Savage realm, he can only attack the Yao. Then who will we attack first? Lin Qian said. North Tianhuan. Chao Xian said coldly. North Tianhuan. Shuedong said gravely. North Tianhuan is weak, and is like a bone in our throats that must be plucked first. Mu Xian said. North Tianhuan. Minan was in a complex mood. Then let us move. Lin Qian said briskly. Chapter 894 Response. The mobilization rate of the MO was astounding. Zhua Mo was very astonished. Even Mo Cloud Sea would take longer to move people on such scale. And in the Xiuzha world, Mo Cloud Sea was considered the best. Fighting and battle had a special place in the minds of Mo. Their enthusiasm towards battle was unlike the Xiuzha and the Yao. The Xiuzha did not fear battle. The Yao did not like battle, while the Mo were enthusiastic towards battle. In Zhuamo's view, this attitude was madness and unreasonable. The decision to leave an Mo in charge had evident effects. In a short 15 days, all 500,000 Nether Realm troops had finished preparing for war. Nether Realm anticipated the impending war. The morale of the populace was high. Just before Zhua Mo prepared to depart, the news that Kunlun had began attacking Tianhuan was passed to Zhua Mo through Mo Cloud Sea. Zhua Mo and Lin Qian had fought for many years and were familiar with each other. Almost instantly Zhua Mo under what Lin Qian planned. In these past days, Zhua Mo had been studying the situation of the Xiuzha world. Large amounts of intelligence and information had been passed over from Mo Cloud Sea. The situation of the Xiuzha world gradually became clear. North Tianhuan, who had greatly expended itself, was not a match for Kunlun. Also, Zhua Mo speculated that Kunlun would have Minan lead at the front. Minan would know the most about Tianhuan's territories. After siding with Kunlun, Minan had been treated very well. He didn't just lead the battalion he had before, he had received large amounts of jingshi and resources. His soldiers were strong and well supplied. In order to avoid suspicion and to prove his ability, Minan would fight as hard as he could. Li Xian'er's commanders were on par with Kunlun's. Mu Shuang was one of the 10 top battle generals, and Gongya Xiaorong had grown into a top battle general in the past 10 years. However, Tianhuan had been greatly wounded by the civil war. The internal conflict of the past years had used up most of their resources. While Mu Shuang and Gongya Xiaorong were skilled, they were restrained by the lack of resources. The more they fought, the less manpower they had, the more resources they had spent. Tianhuan would not be able to fight against Kunlun's armies. Once they swallowed Tianhuan, Kunlun would obtain another half of a realm. They would have a territory the size of 3 realms. Such a large territory was suffocatingly large. However, Zhua Mo did not plan to let Kunlun have it so easily. His eyes flashed with cold light. In terms of famous commanders, Kunlun was nothing. Gu Liangdao threw the report that indicated Mu Shuang had been defeated to the table and stood up. Big brother, the preparations are done. Shuangyu said gravely. His eyes flashed with light and were filled with fighting spirit. 10 years ago, they had been defeated by Shuedong. Over these 10 years, Shuangyu had never slacked on his cultivation for a moment. Right now his power was at pseudo-god level. It was time to repay the enemy for that defeat. All of the battalions under Gu Liangdao's command held a grudge. They had lost so much in that battle. That battle had been a serious blow to Gu Liangdao especially, and he had been discouraged for a very long time. Gu Liangdao held a high place in the hearts of these people. Every person felt extremely discomfort when they saw boss so discouraged, and their hate of Kunlun increased by the day. Gu Liangdao's hair was peppered with white, and his gaze was weary. However, today he gave off a great presence just like he did in the past, as though he was looking down on the world. There seemed to be fire burning in his eyes. Gu Liangdao nodded and walked towards the door. He pushed open the door. The organized battalion stood upright in the cold wind outside. Each person's face flashed with bright fighting spirit. They did not retreat in the cold wind, their backs straight and their gazes heated. Gu Liangdao looked at the battalion that he had created, the faces of his subordinates who had followed him for so many years. He was filled with emotion. He suppressed his excitement and said, 10 years ago we were defeated, 10 years later we fight again. Thinking of the terrible defeat 10 years ago, everyone's breathing became heavy and their expressions twisted. What we lost 10 years ago, we will take back with our hands 10 years later. Gu Liangdao's gaze was like a blade that slowly swept through as he said, emphasizing each word, we will win. 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 The tsunami of shouts echoed in the cold wind. Everyone within it felt as though their blood suddenly started to burn. Depart. Gu Liangdao was the first to move. Yang Yuanhao looked carefully on the paper crane on his hand, as though there was something growing on the paper crane. He had been in sitting this position for the better half of an hour. This guy making such a great fuss upon his first reappearance. Lin Qian had terrible luck to encounter an opponent like this, so pitiful. Yang Yuanhao muttered inside. However, he had an expression of schadenfreude. For hours ago, he had received the news that Kunlun was unstoppable against Tian Huan. All right, the villain will have their own opponents. Yang Yuanhao comforted himself. He knew very well that both he and Gu Liangdao had lost the ability to remain neutral. The world becoming united could not be stopped. They could only join a side. Originally, he had thought that Kunlun's unification of the four realms was certain. Who would have expected that Zhua Mo, who had disappeared for 10 years, would suddenly reappear and disrupt the situation? If there was no Zhua Mo, then Kunlun was unstoppable. Zhua Mo being alive didn't just meant that the powerful Mo Cloud Sea would not collapse. There was something else more important. Zhua Mo's existence would form an even stronger alliance. The alliance of Gu Liangdao, the four minor Diana sects, and Mo Cloud Sea would be a strong alliance. Even Li Xian'er and the others of North Tian Huan were potential allies for this alliance. Yang Yuanhao had formed an unspoken agreement with Zhua Mo all those years ago. He had been prepared to side with Mo Cloud Sea in the past. However, he hadn't done so after Zhua Mo disappeared. But he still had helped Gongsun Cha conquer Shixian at the crucial moment. Gu Liangdao had great ambitions in the past. That defeat 10 years ago had crushed his hopes. In Yang Yuanhao's opinion, Gu Liangdao would side with Mo Cloud Sea. If they sided with Mo Cloud Sea, then Mo Cloud Sea would have 4 top battle generals, one more than Kunlun. Mo Cloud Sea would become the only choice for the factions that could not side with Kunlun or disliked Kunlun. When Yang Yuanhao had received Zhua Mo's paper crane, he had started to prepare to lead the 4 minor Diana sects to join Mo Cloud Sea. However, Zhua Mo's plan was really devious. A thread of flame rose on Yang Yuanhao's hand and consumed the paper crane. Not even ashes were left. Among the flames, Yang Yuanhao stood up. He had not been idle in these 10 years. Li Xian'er's face was ashen. Mi Shuang had been defeated. Defeated by Mi Nan. Li Xian'er KNWW. The difference in skill between Mi Nan and Mu Shuang was not large. In the past years, both of them had exchanged victories and defeats. Yet Mi Nan, who had been resupplied, was stronger, and Mu Shuang's battalion was in remnants. They didn't even have enough Shen equipment. Mi Nan was familiar with Tian Huan's tactics. Possessing an absolute advantage, his attacks came in suffocating waves. Mu Shuang could not stop Mi Nan's attack and successively lost. For 10 years, the battle between North and South Tian Huan had never stopped. No one in Tian Huan could accept that Tian Huan had split. Even tired to the bone, they still persisted. Li Xian'er was bewildered. In these years she hadn't given up. She had cultivated day and night. While she had not reached God level, she had successfully reached pseudo-God level. In another 5 or 6 years, she would be able to enter God level. If she was God level, Tian Huan would be able to fight back. Li Xian'er was filled with self-recrimination. Gongye Xiaorong walked in. The handsome youth of the past now had a mature aura. There was no marks of the pride of the past. He noticed Li Xian'er's expression and sighed inside. Little Shimmy, do not blame yourself, he comforted softly. As long as we have a clear conscience. Liang Xianair raised her head and looked at Gongye Xiaorong. She said determinedly, "Shi Xiang, do not comfort me. As long as there is a chance, I will not give up." A hint of admiration flashed through Gongye Xiaorong's gaze. He nodded and said, "That is right. Little Shimmy, it seems that we cannot stop Kunlun with our own strength. Shi Xiang means we should recruit some allies?" Li Xianair reacted quickly. "Yes. At this time, the only one that has the strength to help us is Mo Cloud Sea." Gongye Xiaorong said gravely, "Shimmy, please go to Mo Cloud Sea. I believe that Lil Miss Gongsun understands that without the lips, the teeth will feel cold." "All right." Li Xianair did not hesitate and nodded briskly. "Elder Mu and I will try to gain time for Shimmy to negotiate," Gongye Xiaorong said gravely. Seeing Gongye Xiaorong's grave countenance, Li Xianair suddenly realized. Elder Mu and Xiaorong Shixiang were prepared to sacrifice themselves. Tears streaming down, Li Xianair bit her lips to stop the sobs from coming out. She wiped her tears, raised her head and said with determination, "I will persuade Mo Cloud Sea. Then I will rely on Shimmy." Gongye Xiaorong patted Li Xianair's shoulder and turned to leave. Li Xianair finally could not stop herself and sobbed. The army was vast. The Netherrealm's campaign had not concealed their actions, but was as public as possible. When the army of 500,000 flew through the sky and covered it, the land would darken under their shadows. The troops that seemed endless made people unable to muster up any resistance. Everywhere they passed, there was only trembling and terror. Zhuo-Mo's Shir's chariot. It had been stored in Nether King Palace and naturally became Zhuo-Mo's property now. This Nether King chariot that was famed throughout the Nether realm was enormous and like a small mobile palace. Seeing the Nether King chariot, Zhuo-Mo found that while his golden chariot looked grand, it was still lacking in magnificence compared to this chariot. The Nether King chariot was extremely stable when it flew. Inside the chariot, Zhuo-Mo sat on the throne, and the commanders gathered below him. People noticed that a female mask-wearing guard was next to King, and secretly speculated to her identity and origins. An Mo was in charge of the strategic meeting. An Mo and Liang Wei had worked together to make this war plan. Liang Wei knew 100 Savage Realm better than an Mo. Zhuo-Mo could not point out any problems in the plan the two had made. However, unlike the calm they showed, an Mo and Liang Wei were extremely nervous. It was the first time the two commanded such a large-scale war, and they couldn't help but feel nervous. Their first target was the Mo Martial Alliance. When the enormous army of the Nether King that seemed to be endless appeared on the horizon at the border, all of 100 Savage Realm was stunned. Chapter 895. An unexpected occurrence. The Nether Realm being so overt with their mobilizations meant that it gave the Mo Martials Alliance time to move their battalions in response. All of the battalions of the Mo Martial Alliance were moved to the border between the Mo Martials Alliance and Nether Realm. The other factions of 100 Savage Realm didn't take the opportunity to attack the Mo Martials Alliance, but sent their battalions to help. Everyone knew that the Mo Martial Alliance alone could not stop the army of the Nether King. The presence of the Nether King's army caused 100 Savage Realm that had been filled with conflict to unite for the first time. Everyone had fought for many years, and were familiar with each other. No one wanted to become the captives of the Nether King. The Mo Martials Alliance, the Heroes Alliance, and the Mo Shin Temple all sent their strongest battalions, gathering over 300,000, to form the 100 Savage Allied Army. Beast Cry Jia, Desolate Jia, Skywood Jia, First Clear Jia, Eastern Snake Jia. These 5 Jias were the gateways for Netherrealm to enter 100 Savage Realm. Once the army of the Nether King broke the defense line of these 5 Jia, there were more than 7 paths to penetrate deep into 100 Savage Realm. The 500,000 strong of the Nether King would be able to sweep 100 Savage Realm. This meant that the 5 Jia's defense line became the crucial location of the first battle. The Mo Martial Alliance led by Gongzi, she was in charge of Skywood Jia. The Heroes Alliance was positioned at First Clear Jia and Eastern Snake Jia. The locations under the most pressure, Beast Cry Jia and Desolate Jia, were being held by the strongest faction, Mo Shin Temple. 100 Savage Realm had good commanders and elite battalions. The army of 300,000 gathered at the 5 Jia. These 5 jia were located adjacent to each other and formed a horn. They had the advantage of being on home territory, meaning the 100 Savage allied army had the impenetrable defense line of the 5 jia. The Nether King would not be able to defeat the 5 jia defense line unless he had an army of 1,000,000. This would be an unprecedentedly large battle. No one in Nether Realm had thought that 100 Savage Realm would put aside their grudges and unite. While the 100 Savage allied army had 200,000 fewer troops, they had the benefit of the defense line. This meant that the difference in power between the two sides was not as large as imagined. If they just attacked head-on, the fatalities would be astounding. And Mo and Liang Wei hadn't expected that 100 Savage Realm would unite and create an allied army. The mood inside the large hall was low. They were discouraged. Everyone was experienced in battle. Seeing the 100 Savage allied army appearing as though they would hold out until the end, their expressions turned grave. This battle would be crueler than they imagined. There was not much technique to speak of in trench warfare like this. Bravery and decisiveness were most important, and this usually meant large numbers of fatalities. Their enemies were not short-sighted people. Their army of 500,000 were being blocked at the border. This was like a bucket of cold water poured over everyone's heads. However, they could not retreat. They had been so confident before. If they retreated now, wouldn't they become a joke? Also, the blow to morale would be fatal. First, set up camp. Mo saw that no one had a solution and helped them out. Everyone sighed in relief. If King gave the order to attack now, they would most likely come back bloodied. And Mo and Liang Wei stayed behind. This subordinate. And Mo's face was full of shame. King had given him control of the entire situation at the start. He was filled with frustration at having ruined it. Mo waved his hand and interrupted an Mo. He said coolly, "Right now, determining a solution is most important. What do you think?" And Mo adjusted his emotions and said after a moment of thought, "Attacking head-on is not plausible. The fatalities will be too high. We have investigated. The defense line is not very strong, but after constant preparation over the last few days, it is much stronger than before. More importantly, the battalions are large. Almost 70% of 100 Savages battalions were conscripted. This is not a bad thing. If we win this battle, then 100 Savage Realm will be ours," Mo said coldly. He glanced at Liang Wei. This person that Pu Yao had praised endlessly hadn't shown much skill. He asked, "Liang Wei, what do you think?" Liang Wei had been twisting his mind to ponder the problem. Hearing Mo ask, he shook his head and said, "I have not thought it through." Mo saw this and said, "Go back and think." After the two left, Mo frowned as well. He hadn't thought that 100 Savage Realm would actually unite. What Mo didn't know was that it was because his reputation had been too stunning. The mirage of the battle at Nether King River had spread through 100 Savage Realm. The power of a god level made everyone feel fear and awe. In terms of individual fame, Mo had surpassed Shur. Shur had united Nether Realm, but people thought of him more as Nether King. 100 Savage Realm had not been affected. However, this new Nether King caused many of the people of 100 Savage Realm to consider if the Nether King qualified to become the king of all Mo. It was because of Mo's strong performance that the factions of 100 Savage Realm were alarmed. All of them knew that there was only one result if they did not unite. Nether King would unite the Mo. This was something that the Mo Shen Temple, the Mo Marshals Alliance, and the Heroes Alliance were not willing to see. Nether King became the top enemy for all the factions of 100 Savage Realm. Mo did not have a solution. At this time, 100 Savage Realm's rear was empty. If he had Gong Sun Cha and Bi Han take the opportunity, they could cause 100 Savage allied army to panic. But only relying on the forces of half of Tian Huan, Gu Liang Dao, and Yang Yuan Hao was not enough to fight Kunlun. The situation of the four realm mirrored 100 Savage Realm. Mo Cloud Sea, Tian Huan, the four minor Diana sects, and Gu Liang Dao had allied together to fight Kunlun. Mo grimaced. However, he was not discouraged. There would be many solutions to any problem. Also, he had the initiative. He had to think of a good solution. Li Xian'er's arrival was not known by many. The one that received her was Gong Sun Cha. 10 years had passed, but Gong Suncha's bashful smile was the same as before, the one of the neighbor's boy. No one could connect him to that world-shocking invincible battle general. Li Xian'er's complexion was slightly fragile, but her expression was calm. She bowed towards Gong Suncha. Greetings to Mr. Gong Suncha. Gong Suncha politely returned the greeting. Miss Li does not have to be so polite. Li Xian'er did not waste words and went directly to the main topic. I have come to ask for aid from Mo Cloud Sea. If the lips are gone, the teeth will be left exposed to the cold. Mr. Gong Sun is unparalleled in your intelligence. You should see this more clearly than I do. No matter what Mo Cloud Sea demands, as long as my Tian Huan can achieve it, we will not refuse. She then took out a large jade box. The jade box was of fine quality and high grade. This is the pace of the Shen device that Tian Huan obtained from Mr. Zhua Mo in the past. We should have personally returned it to Mr. Zhua Mo, the rightful owner. Now at this juncture, we can only give it to Mr. Gong Sun. Many thanks, Miss Xian'er. Gong Suncha took the jade box and returned a bow gravely. A hint of admiration flashed through his eyes. He had to say that Li Xian'er was really wise. She was sincere and decisive. She knew that at this time she had no room to discuss conditions, and so allowed Mo Cloud Sea to set the price. Pity that Kunlun didn't give her any time to negotiate. Gong Suncha saw it clearly. Regardless of whether Kunlun would succeed this time, North Tian Huan would have a difficult time surviving. Gong Suncha nodded and said, "We only have one condition." Li Xian'er sighed in relief inside. As long as Mo Cloud Sea was willing to negotiate, that meant that they were willing to send aid. Li Xian'er didn't care about the conditions now. The things that Tian Huan had left were pitifully few. They would not be able to hold the half-realm of territory they had left. Rather than give it to Kunlun, she would rather give it to Mo Cloud Sea. She focused. Please speak. We have no ambitions in regards to Tian Huan's lands. Li Xian'er was even more curious. They didn't want territory, then what did they want? Tian Huan really had no wealth left. We want 10,000 managerial-level forgers and seal xiao, Gong Suncha said coolly. Li Xian'er's body shook. She hadn't thought that Mo Cloud Sea would desire those forgers and seal xiao. In Tian Huan, any forgers and seal xiao that were on managerial level were skilled and experienced. They would be able to work independence. These people were the most valuable part of Tian Huan, and the true wealth that Tian Huan had accumulated over the thousands of years. Gong Suncha saw Li Xian'er's internal struggle. He did not fear that the other wouldn't agree, but he still spoke. I heard that the forgers and seal xiao of Tian Huan have not forged for several years. Gong Suncha's words shattered Li Xian'er's last mental block. Gong Suncha was right. Due to the long war, the resources had been used up. Right now Tian Huan lacked materials. Without materials, these forging experts didn't have any solution. They could only work on repairing Shen equipment. If these forging experts joined, Mo Cloud Sea that was already famed for its forging would receive a great boost in their strength. Minan had led South Tian Huan to join Kunlun. Many forgers and seal xiao had entered Kunlun. It could be predicted that Kunlun's Shen equipment level would increase greatly in the near future. Lil Miss also saw this. In his view, Tian Huan was poor right now. They only had two treasures. One was the seal xiao skilled in forging, and the other were the two top battle generals, Mu Shuang and Gongye Xiaorong. Mu Shuang and Gongye Xiaorong would not be able to be requested, so Lil Miss targeted these forging experts. In Lil Miss' view, Li Xian'er would agree. One was because she didn't have any other choice. The other was because while these forgers were astoundingly valuable, in Tian Huan which lacked materials, they were not of use at all. I do not agree. Unexpectedly, Li Xian'er shook her head. Gong Suncha frowned and looked in surprise at Li Xian'er. Li Xian'er seemed to have reached some conclusion. We will join Mo Cloud Sea. Astounding words. Once Li Xian'er said this, she felt light. That invisible burden that had been weighing on her disappeared. Her face glowed with another kind of light. When Gong Suncha mentioned the seal xiao, Li Xian'er realized. Tian Huan was at the end of its path. Even if they managed to survive this time, a Tian Huan that lost their seal xiao wouldn't be as strong as a normal faction, much less survive sitting between the two titans of Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea. The four realms had reached the era of the titans. The weak Tian Huan was fated to die. Not just Tian Huan, the four minor Diana sects, and Guliang Dao were the same. Rather than being forced to choose after their defeat, it would be better to join Mo Cloud Sea when they still had value. This way, aid was expected. With Mu Shuang and Gong Ye Xiaorong as the supports in the future, the days of Tian Huan's people would not be bad. Once Li Xian'er thought through all this, she knew that this was the best chance. So she immediately decided. Gong Sun Cha was stunned. Chapter 896. Have to fight. Zuoyamo was stunned when he received the message Lil Miss sent. Zuoyamo had interacted with Li Xian'er before. In his impression, while Li Xian'er was determined she would not join Mo Cloud Sea, after he read the entire message he lamented. Even the strongest faction, once it split internally, would decline. Thinking of the previous Tian Huan, he sighed. That was an existence that had matched Kunlun. When the Tian Huan of the past moved against them on the market, Mo Cloud Sea wasn't even able to buy materials. Who would have thought that Tian Huan would end up in such dire straits? After he finished lamenting, Zuoyamo started to scratch his head. His original plan was to use Tian Huan to distract Kunlun, and then they would carry out a few sneak attacks to delay the other. After he finished uniting the Mo, the two sides would meet up and then defeat Kunlun. Now he found that his imagination had been too optimistic. He encountered a hardy resistance from 100 Savage Realm that they had thought would be easily defeated. The 5Jia defense line was one that would cost countless lives to defeat in open battle. Li Xian'er joining in also disrupted his plan. Would they agree for Li Xian'er and North Tian Huan joining? They could only agree. Just for the numerous seal show of North Tian Huan and the two top battle generals, Zuoyamo had to agree. But if they agreed, North Tian Huan was then Mo Cloud Sea's territory. That meant that the battle between Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea would now start on all fronts. It wouldn't be possible to hide behind Tian Huan and make sneak attacks like they had planned. After thinking for a few moments, Zuoyamo found that this problem was not an issue of whether he was willing or not. It was unavoidable. Since that's the case, then fight. Zuoyamo calculated the time. Eldest Shixiang and the others probably would reach Mo Cloud Sea soon. Liao Lin looked around warily. He was the captain of the scout patrol and was responsible for leading a team of 300. As an old-timer of Vermilion Bird Camp, he could not be considered to have ended up well, but he did not care. He knew how much skill he had. If he hadn't encountered Boss, he would have just been a store clerk his entire life. He was satisfied now at being in charge of 300 people, especially since they were an elite scout troop. Vermilion Bird Camp had become a legendary existence in Mo Cloud Sea. The experiences brought him many benefits. For example, when he first took charge of the scout troop, the rebellious youths were extremely respectful when they heard he was from Vermilion Bird Camp. Liao Lin's strength was not outstanding in Vermilion's bird camp, but he was a clever and cautious person. Also, the people that came from Vermilion Bird Camp had that aura. They had been completely trained through Lil Miss Demon training in the past. They were methodical in everything they did. He led the scout troop and seemed to roam aimlessly in the air. Since Kunlun started to attack North Tian Huan, Mo Cloud Sea had entered battle mode. The battalions quickly gathered. Liao Lin's mission was to eliminate the enemy spies and scouts in the area. The so-called enemy spies were only one kind, Kunlun's spies. Liao Lin's group had fought with Kunlun's spies a few times already. Kunlun's scouts were extremely skilled. One-on-one, they could not win. However, this was their territory. Once they found the tracks of the enemy spies, they had ways of dealing with the enemy. Suddenly, Liao Li raised his head. "Captain Liao, what?" his subordinate asked curiously. He looked over. There was nothing. Liao Lin's expression became grave. He could feel an extremely small wave of vibration. But quickly, the vibrations was becoming strong at an astounding rate. No, not just one wave. Enemy attack. Liao Lin said gravely. So fast. In the sky, several black dots were nearing at astounding speed. At this time, everyone felt the vibrations in the air. The enemy was so fast, it was terrifying. Experts. 5 figures flew above the clouds at astounding speed. They did not conceal themselves at all. The enormous howl created by high-speed flight came from far away. The thick cloud sea under them seemed to be cut up by scissors. Everyone was astounded by this scene. They had seen those talismans or movement methods famed for their speed, but it was the first time they saw such speed. Liao Lin was the first to recover from the shock. His heart rose up and he was about to charge towards them. He still underestimated the other's speed. In this instant, they reached him. When Liao Lin saw the appearance of the person at the front, he seemed to be struck by lightning. He exclaimed, "Teacher Wei." The person at the front heard Liao Lin's exclamation, and his body curved. He appeared without warning in front of Liao Lin. His action immediately attracted the hostility of the scout troop. The entire troop was about to leap towards him. "Hold!" Liao Lin seemed to wake up and hurriedly shouted. The scout troop stopped. Liao Lin's gaze didn't dare to move away from the familiar face. He was afraid that if he moved, he would find that this was just an illusion of his. His LPS trembled. "Teacher Wei. Teacher Wei, is it you?" Wei Xing examined Liao Lin, and then he had a smile. "You are little Liao Zi?" He had taught Vermilion Bird Camp sword scriptures in the past, and was familiar with some of them. Liao Lin was one of them. "Teacher Wei. Teacher Wei. You have really returned." Liao Lin's tears could not be stopped and trailed down. He frightened his subordinates. They had never seen Captain Liao like this. Liao Lin wiped his face. His gaze swept across the others and his heart suddenly trembled. "Teacher Wei, what of Darren? Miss Gui?" Wei Xing had a gentle smile. "They will come back after a while." "Darren is still alive? Miss Gui is still alive?" Liao Lin asked in a trembling voice. "Yes, still alive." Wei Xing could understand Liao Lin's excitement. His deep voice was filled with the power to make people believe. "Great! Great!" Liao Lin was so excited he was incoherent. Wei Xing had returned. Zhongru had returned. Sung Lianer had returned. Wu Li and Luo Li had returned. The news swept like a gust of wind. Within the span of night, the news spread all over Mo Cloud Sea. Mo Cloud Sea shook. The entire world shook. Zhuo Mo was still alive. Miss Gui was still alive. They would return soon. Shortly after North Tianhuan announced they were joining Mo Cloud Sea. The day after, the 4 minor Diana sects and Guliangdao separately announced they were joining Mo Cloud Sea. The world was amazed. Another titan took form. Joining North Tianhuan, the 4 minor Diana sects, Guliangdao and Mo Cloud Sea. They possessed over 1.5 realms of territory. In terms of land, Mo Cloud Sea was much smaller than Kunlun's 2.5. But in other areas, Mo Cloud Sea was even stronger, especially in terms of battle generals. At this time, Mo Cloud Sea had 6 top battle generals under their command: Gong Suncha, Bihan, Yang Yuanhao, Guliangdao, Mushuang, and Gongye Xiaorong. Such a grand team was enough to outshine even Kunlun's 3 famed battle generals. After absorbing North Tianhuan's astounding number of Sealxiao, Mo Cloud Sea's forging strength would increase tangibly. The Mo Cloud Sea, which was already extremely rich, would become truly strong in their army with the addition of so many battle generals. In the evaluations by all sides, for the first time, Mo Cloud Sea became a large faction on par with Kunlun. Everyone thought that the two were evenly matched, with both sides having their advantage and disadvantages. Kunlun was both alarmed and angry that North Tianhuan, the 4 minor Diana sects, and Yang Yuanhao joined Mo Cloud Sea at the same time. The return of Wei Sheng and the others didn't just make up for Mo Cloud Sea's weakness in terms of high-level offensive power, it also stabilized the hearts of Mo Cloud Sea. Now everyone knew that Zhuo Mo was going to return. The situation changed so quickly that all of Kunlun felt they were caught off guard. A cooked duck had just flown away. Everyone felt extremely frustrated. Even a person who did not show their emotions easily like Lin Qian had a black expression. Zhuo Mo was still alive. Lin Qian could not understand how these people had escaped from the Central Plains. But he knew just how terrible this piece of news was. All of the changes were linked by one fact: Zhuo was still alive. Only with Zhuo being alive did people have such a hopeful outlook on Mo Cloud C. And these people would join Mo Cloud C. Yet he didn't have time to rage. There was an even more urgent problem to be solved. Should they still fight North Tianhuan? Fighting would mean that they would start their battle in full with Mo Cloud C. If they didn't fight, regardless of Kunlun being made a joke, it would not be so easy to invade North Tianhuan in the future. Everyone in Kunlun had dark expressions. They knew that Kunlun had not prepared to start a full war against Mo Cloud C. Their original plan was to consume and increase their morale. Kunlun would gradually move their people, and after taking over the other factions, they would ride their wave of victory to have a final battle with Mo Cloud C. This choice would decide Kunlun's face. Everyone's eyes gathered on Lin Qian. Other than Lin Qian, no one qualified to make the decision at this time. Lin Qian's face gradually recovered. His expression was determined. Fight! We have not prepared, but Mo Cloud C has not prepared either. If we wait for them to organize, our situation would become more difficult. Then fight! Xue Dong stood up first and said, "For Kunlun! For Kunlun!" Everyone stood up with decisiveness on their faces. Gongye Xiaorong looked at the wreckage on the battlefield with a heavy heart. When Li Xianair sent him the message that they were preparing to join Mo Cloud C, he was silent. He knew that Li Xianair's decision was right. He was not the only one. Elder Mu Shuang also knew. But Elder Mu Shuang still cried in sorrow. Gongye Xiaorong did not cry. He felt relieved of a burden. He was still young, and his feelings towards Tianhuan was not as deep as that of Elder Mu Shuang. He had struggled for 10 years with no hope. The feeling of helplessness had hung over him for 10 years. Right now, his performance would determine the fates of everyone in the future. He felt it was good to use his merits to win better lives for everyone. At least he could accomplish this. Mo Cloud C was stronger and better prepared than he imagined. Their supplies had already reached their destinations. The following battle would be a cruel bloodbath. Kunlun had no option of retreat left. However, neither did he. Chapter 897. Liang Wei's plan. Everyone was stunned by Liang Wei's proposed battle plan. Inside the large hall, Liang Wei's voice echoed. The enemy possesses a weakness that is not a weakness. They do not have a god-level expert. Additionally, the battalions that guard each jie do not belong to the same faction. When pressed, they will not work so well between themselves. The enemy's carefully created defense line is strong. If we just charge, we will definitely be defeated, and the fatalities will be high. However, our strongest point is that King is god level. Liang Wei's wolf-like gaze swept across the entire hall. At this time, his edges were completely displayed. No one opposed him. Liang Wei was right. In front of a god level, this defense line could not reach perfection. But even so, each of them was shocked by Liang Wei's daring plan. We will send 400,000 to the first engagement, and openly attack the 5 jie defense line. There is only one aim, to put pressure on the entire defense line, enough pressure. That way, they can only fight for themselves, and the cooperation between them will be cut off. Liang Wei continued, his expression calm and confident. He did not show any timidity in front of the hall of strong experts. When the enemy is completely suppressed, King will lead an elite of 50,000 to attack Skywood Jie guarded by the Mo Marshals Alliance. Skywood Jie is the final target of our attack. There are 2 reasons. One is that the Mo Marshals Alliance is the weakest, and is the best opening. The second is that this defense line is the territory of the Mo Marshals Alliance. Once Gongzishi is defeated, Mo Shen Temple and the Heroes Alliance will be fighting on foreign land. They will have a much harder time rallying local help. If we can open a hole, the enemy holding the 5 jie defense line will be meaningless. They can only retreat. We will move in and successively invade 100 Savage Realm. Liang Wei slowly spoke his conclusion. The hall was completely silent. No one had recovered from the shock. In this plan that Liang Wei had designed, the amount of manpower invested into the first attack reached an astounding 400,000. They would sortie 80% of their manpower for the first wave of attack. This was something rarely seen in wars, and risking in such a large amount was even rarer. It is the first time everyone was waging a campaign of such scale. They were extremely cautious. Someone objected. Wouldn't it be too dangerous to invest so many forces the first engagement? Liang Wei explained. The other has the benefit of the defense line. We cannot add to their morale. If we cannot defeat them in the first wave, their confidence will increase. Emboldened, they will be more likely to fight to the death, and their defense will strengthen. Then the 5Jia defense line will become a meat grinder. We may be pulled in to die. Someone else stood up to object. The plan is good, but the fatalities will be too high. Liang Wei did not avoid the topic and said honestly, yes, the fatalities in this plan will be high, however, our superior numbers is our advantage. We can accept fatalities of this degree. I think it is worthwhile to use a certain amount of fatalities in exchange for time, space, and morale. Also, breaking any defense line will always have high fatalities, let alone one like this. The opposers were silent. No matter who the person was, the fatalities would be high in defeating a defense line. Liang Wei suddenly looked at Zhuamo. He hesitated but still gritted out. The crux of this plan is King. If King wins, we win. He actually had something he didn't say. If King lost, they lost. But he didn't say it. Would King lose? No one dared to make a sound in the hall. An Mo stood out and shook his head. He said, the fighting has just begun. There is no need for King to personally go to the front lines. We can first test them and then try to find a weakness in the defense line. Zhuamo waved his hand and interrupted an Mo. He stood up and looked around. Well, use this plan. An Mo Liang Wei, organize the battalions to attack each Jia tonight. The battalions are to follow the plan and be in attack formation. Zhuamo's words concluded the entire discussion. He had to admit that Liang Wei's plan was outstanding. There was no aspect that appeared spectacular, but it was honest. Even if the enemy knew their plan, they would not have a solution. This was the true style of a great general. No one knew how important time was to Zhuamo. No wonder Pu Yao had endless praise for Liang Wei. A plan like this did not have many complex parts, but not everyone would have the resolve. Only when one clearly saw the benefits and shortcomings involved would they have such decisiveness and bravery. An Mo and Liang Wei responded. An Mo did not agree, but he would still carry out King's decision seriously. Zhuamo looked at the crowd and said coldly, this King will be fighting at the front. Battalions, remember, this battle has me. We are invincible. We will advance, not retreat. Anyone that disobeys, kill. Anyone that is fearful and does not advance, kill. The 2 kills caused the temperature in the room to suddenly decrease. It was the first time they saw King so cold and decisive. Their hearts shook. They stood and responded, yes. Countless blinding lights swept across the sky. The lights were like rain and illuminated the night sky as bright as day. The enormous explosions were like strong sound attacks that battered at people's minds and their eardrums. Gongye Xiaorong bit down on his lips and almost bit through them. The formation in front of him was almost completely covered by Kunlun's attacks. He could see the corpses blown into the air by the explosions and pillars of blood shooting into the sky. This battalion that he had spent countless efforts, blood, sweat, and tears to create was being killed. That simple and cruel defense line was one that he had rushed to build. He had expected that Kunlun would put everything into the attack, but he had still underestimated Kunlun's offensive strength. The one that attacked his battalion was Wuxia battalion. This female battalion that was famed for her detailed attacks was so dominant when she attacked. The battalion at the front was being killed off. With every person's sacrifice, his heart dripped blood. His hand uncontrollably trembled, but his gaze did not wave at all. He was waiting for the time to retaliate. Wuxia battalion attacking without any restraint would cause them to use a great amount of Shen power. Gongye Xiaorong used half of his battalion and Jinji to delay the other for the chance to attack. He rejoiced that it was Wuxia battalion that attacked him and not Shuadong battalion. Just as he expected, Wuxia battalion was strong, but it was clear that they were not skilled in a strong offensive tactics. They did not have good control of how much Shen power they used. This was his only chance, a chance that he used the lives of half his battalion to trade for. The resilient Gongya Xiaorong did not forget his sensitive perception, due to the pain he was enduring. The enemy's attacks still rained down wildly, but Gongya Xiaorong detected that hint of exhaustion in the storm, the easing of the relentless storm. It was now. Gongya Xiaorong did not hesitate and shouted harshly, "Kill." There were less than 2,000 people next to him. Yet these people had watched with glaring eyes as thy brothers were killed, and were mad. Tian Huan's unique attacking battle formation suddenly lit up with blinding light that no one had expected. At the same time, at the ground to the flank of Mu Xian's battalion, the same light lit up. Before Mu Xian had arrived, Gongya Xiaorong and set up small-distance transportation formations in the surroundings. These transportation formations had been concealed with thick layers of earth. Mu Xian battalion had not detected them at all. Whoosh! The battalion disappeared in the air and appeared at the flank of Mu Xian battalion. The presence of the battle formation reached a peak and shot in the air. Hundreds of blinding circles of light flew into the enemy battle formation. The sudden attack caused Mu Xian's battalion to descend into chaos. Blood sprayed out. These blinding circles of light were filled with countless seal scripts. Once they flew into Mu Xian battalion, they spun at high speed as they grew in size. Everywhere they passed, blood flew. However, Mu Xian battalion was a famed elite battalion. After the initial panic, they quickly recovered and responded. A proportion of the Xiuzhi quickly cast defensive Shen techniques while another group prepared attacking Shen techniques. Yet quickly their expressions changed. Their Shen power was almost used up. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Another wave of hundreds of circles flew into Mu Xian battalion. Mu Xian paled. She finally realized what Gongya Xiaorong had planned. She was filled with regret. She had been careless. They had been unstoppable before. Under the attacks of her battalion and Minan's battalion, Gongya Xiaorong and Mu Shuang had been repeatedly defeated and left nearly crippled. While North Tian Huan had joined Mo Cloud Sea, far water did not resolve thirst. She had dismissed both Gongya Xiaorong and Mu Shuang. In her view, taking Tian Huan was just a matter of time. Because Lin Qian had asked them to conquer North Tian Huan as fast as possible, she had chosen a strong offensive strategy. Mu Xian battalion that had almost no Shen power left had the advantage of numbers, but the lively 1,000 or so people held the upper hand. Gongya Xiaorong led his battalion of less than 2,000 to furiously attack Mu Xian battalion. She had misstepped. Mu Xian's expression quickly recovered and she ordered without hesitation, "Fourth team, engage them. Everyone else, retreat. Use Ling beasts." Soon a troop of 2,000 flew out of Mu Xian battalion and engaged Gongya Xiaorong. The other people called out their Ling beasts and retreated. Gongya Xiaorong saw this and did not chase. He continued to herd and kill the 2,000 that were coming towards him. An hour later, none of the 2,000 were alive. No one had managed to escape. Gongya Xiaorong didn't feel any joy and only endless bitterness. This counterattack could not be counted as a victory since he had traded half of his battalion's lives. When Mu Xian came back, they would have no chance at all. Fortunately, they had finally managed to push back this attack and won a few days of time. He was also going to retreat. Behind him, all of North Tian Huan was creating a retreat of astounding scale. The people continued to move in the direction of Mo Cloud Sea. Tian Huan's defense line was completely destroyed. The difficulty of holding this region was high. In the plan that Gong Sun Cha and the others had designed, Kuan-Luan could take North Tian Huan, but they would only leave behind scorched earth. All of Tian Huan would be moved into Mo Cloud Sea. Mo Cloud Sea's enormous business network displayed its astounding power at this time. Countless transportation ships of astounding volume appeared out of nowhere, forming enormous fleets. Like ants moving, they transported the people of Tian Huan away. And long lines were forming at all the transportation formations. The pieces of Jingshi were being used up like water flowing, yet Mo Cloud Sea did not care. They continued to transport over batches of Jingshi to the transportation formations. It was the first time that people saw Jingshi piled up in literal mountains. The powerful and rich Mo Cloud Sea entered full war mode. No one could underestimate it. North Tianhuan and their people had been in a state of war already. The rule Gongsun Cha had set down was only transport people and not resources. As a result, the effectiveness was astounding. The few days that Gongye Xiaorong won with his sacrifices was extremely valuable. At another transportation formation, a strange battalion stepped out. These people were completely expressionless, their pupils gray-white, covered in grand tattoo and showed no signs of life. When a male with a cold expression and was completely covered in MO matrices walked out of the transportation formation. "It is Bihan Darren." Exclamations rang out among the crowd. The exclamations spread and the crowd started to shift. "He's Bihan Darren? Heavens! This is Sin Battalion." After the exclamations passed, joy and smile floated on the faces of these people. Their hearts finally landed. They were safe with Bihan Darren here. The people from Mo Cloud Sea straightened and lifted their heads up high with respectful and reverent expressions. He was Bihan. Chapter 898. Strong Attack. When Bihan saw the terrible state of Gongye Xiaorong Battalion, he was astounded. A battalion that suffered this level of casualties could be said to be crippled, but their faces gave him pause. Their faces were filled with sorrow and pain, but also with hate and spirit. Bihan nodded inwardly. This battalion was not crippled. When Bihan saw Gongye Xiaorong's calm expression, it proved the conclusion he reached. While he looked exhausted and fragile, his gaze was filled with determination. "Leave this to us, go rest." Bihan's voice had a hint of respect. This had nothing to do with strength. The kind of spirit and determination it took to still hold on and think of ways to force the enemy back in such a disadvantageous battle was worthy of respect. "All right." Gongye Xiaorong looked at Bihan. He felt sadness. Tianhuan had declined and died. Mo Cloud Sea was like the sun in the sky. The change was something that people who were inside Tianhuan felt more deeply. Bihan seemed to see what Gongye Xiaorong was thinking and said, "Your equipment and resources have arrived. Pick your own soldiers. If you are fast, you can still return to this big war." Bihan's tone was cold, but Gongye Xiaorong could hear the care inside it. Gongye Xiaorong became alert. Bihan was right. This war had just started. If they finished recovering fast enough, they could still make it in time. This battle was important to him and Tianhuan. "Man, thanks." Gongye Xiaorong bowed solemnly to Bihan. Bihan nodded, and then turned around expressionlessly to leave. Bihan glanced at the ruined battlefield, and didn't have any intentions of setting up seal formation defense lines. He was not skilled in defense, and he didn't need defense. "Find the position of Wuxia Battalion," Bihan said coldly. Dozens of scouts disappeared into the air. He did not stay where he was but ordered Sim Battalion to advance. He sent out scouts along the way in search of Wuxian's position. Soon the scouts found Wuxian. Wuxian Battalion was advancing murderously. After recovering their Shen power, how could Wuxian Battalion accept their defeat? However, Wuxian had a deep impression from last time. She reflected deeply and had learned her lesson. No top battle general was easy to deal with. Even if the enemy did not have the same manpower, she should never assume the other did not have the ability to retaliate. Wuxian became more wary after she was bitten by Gongye Xiaorong when she had the advantage of manpower. While she had returned this time, she was not careless. Large numbers of scouts were sent out. Soon, the scouts of both sides met in skirmishes. Wuxian quickly learned that there was an unknown battalion that was moving in her direction. She became even more wary. Someone that knew her strength and still dared to come over was not a normal person. She became even more wary but did not retreat. Soon she saw the enemy battalion. Wuxian's expression became grave. Bihan Sim Battalion. They came so quickly. What do they want to do? Yoshi-Yaku looked dazedly at the battalions that were gathering in front of the formation and murmured. The battalions flowed and gathered. The troops were coming constantly as though it was endless. Everyone, including Yoshi-Yaku, was stunned by the scene. In a short period of time, Over 60,000 people had gathered in front of them. What kind of joke was this? Any average battalion here was just 2,000 to 3,000 people. 60,000 people. That meant the enemy had gathered about 30 battalions here. Yoshiake's eyes were experienced. From the presence that these 60,000 exuded, they were not normal battalions. They were well trained. They may be lacking compared to his Yoshi battalion, but at least comparable to the battalions of his subordinates. Even more importantly, numbers. The defense line that Yoshiyaku was stationed at was only 20,000 people. Yoshi battalion was only 5,000 strong. The other 15,000 were from various elite battalions. Suddenly, Yoshiyaku shook and called over his second in command. He held. Go ask what the situation at the other places are like. Yoshiyaku released his hand. The second in command scrambled to contact the other battalions. Yoshiyaku looked dazedly at the terrifying group of battalions with a dark expression. He murmured, "We cannot be this unlucky. Is my place the break point? If that was the case, then it would be terrible." Soon, the second in command rushed back and reported with an ashen face of the situations of the other battalions. Yoshiyaku was stunned. There was an astounding number of enemies gathered at each battalion's base, all of them elite forces. When he calculated the number, he suddenly shook. His face turned ashen. The enemy had put more than 300,000 elite troops into the first wave of attacks. It was so terrifying. No one knew about their own situation better than Yoshiyaku. 100 Savage Realm had fought endlessly for years, and the expenditure of their battalions had been astounding. While they said they had gathered 300,000, about 100,000 of this were just normal battalions. Battalions were not judged just by numbers. Their training and skill level was even more important. Usually, battalions were divided into 3 ranks. The strongest top battalions were all led by the famed battle generals. The difference in numbers between these top battalions was large. For example, Bihan Sim Battalion was always around 3,000 people, while at the other end Muxian Battalion was 10,000. However, at that level, what was important was the collective fighting power, and not numbers. The second rank was the elite battalions. On average, these battalions were weaker than top battalions, but were stronger than normal battalions. It could be said that the elite battalions relied on numbers. The numbers determined the difference in power between opponents. Elite battalions usually did not vary greatly in their skill. They fought based on numbers. The third rank was the normal battalions. They were usually the local garrisons, and acted as reserves for elite battalions. 100 Savage Realm had fought among itself for 10 years, while Nether Realm had rested for 10 years. The difference was completely on display now. Yoshiake's heart continued to sink. His battalion was the strongest of the Emotion Temple next to Chief Emo God. The Emotion Temple had 2 top battalions. The Chief Emo God lead one, Yoshiyaku lead the other, but the difference the number of elite battalions was too high. Top battalions were trump cards. They either decided the battle, or they were used as intimidation. Elite battalions were the main forces in war, and were usually the battalions that were exhausted the fastest. In the 10 years of internal conflict, 100 Savage Realms elite battalions suffered significant losses. This didn't just lower the number of elite battalions, it also decreased the skill level of the elite battalions. Cultivation needed time. The training of an acceptable elite soldier took time. The enemy knew their weakness, and used the simplest and most direct method, a strong attack. And an attack on all fronts. Fighting with more than 300,000 people. Yoshiake's mouth tasted bitter. He could see the problem, but he didn't have a solution. The battalion's shadows stretched out like a forest. Each face flashed with heated fighting spirit. There was only one person in their field of view. The unparalleled king wearing the bronze mask. This battalion was over 50,000 people. They were led by 10 gold battle generals, each of which was a lord of a region or the leader of a clan. They had been through hundreds of battles, were experienced and reliable. They were shrouded in killing intent and were authoritative. There was glory in having King personally leading them. The 10 gold battle generals were extremely excited. When they learned that their battalions had been picked to be led by King personally, everyone knew how rare a chance this was. and they decided they would fight to the death. These 50,000 were the elite of the elite. Each person would be the absolute strongest of an area. Also, each of them had at least 10 years of experience in a battalion. This meant that no matter if it was individual power or combat training, they were some of the best. The entire place was silent and filled with killing intent. These 50,000 would be led by Mo. This was the first time Mo was leading such a large battalion. His gaze was as usual as he swept across the battalion. His mind was unaffected. King, they are in their position. The second in command next to Mo reported loudly. Everyone heard this, and their fighting spirits rose. And Mo and Liang Wei were both participating in this battle. Due to this, they arranged a second in command to communicate with the battalions for Mo. It was about to start. This battle was crucial for Mo. It is not just important for Mo's empire. It would also greatly change the structure of the world. Strangely, Mo's heart was calm. It was not affected at all by the great battle about to start. Without realizing it, he had reached a position of power that he didn't even dare to think about in the past. But Mo, who was maturing by the day, became even more composed. Attack. Mo's icy order was like a spark that immediately ignited this unprecedented campaign. A defense line of 5 jia. An army of 350,000 attacking simultaneously. The defense line exploded. The scene of an army of 350,000 attacking at once was almost unimaginable. The Shen power of 350,000 gathered on the 35,000 Mo captains, then to the 7,000 Mo colonels, and then to the 700 silver battle generals. The Shen techniques with their astounding power covered the entire defense line. The Shen technique each silver battle general release was different. Some sprayed fatal nether mist that immediately covered a range of 100 li. Others were bright, grand, and came like a storm that robbed life. Some were silent and caused immediate death. What was even more stunning was the attacks of gold battle generals. The Shen power that could destroy the land allowed them to release the strongest of Shen techniques. Their powerful control allowed them to easily control the pace of the battle. Boom boom boom. Gray blade energies, hundreds of zhang long with long tails trailing behind as they smashed on the light shield of the defense line. The light shield made from Jinji wavered violently. Before they recovered, the gray mist dozens of zhang tall turned into skulls, packed rains of candles, and white screaming fist energies and other things that smashed against the light barrier. The light shield was like a fragile bubble that immediately shattered. No one had experienced such a terrifying attack, a barrage of such intensity. The Shen power of 350,000 was furiously sent into the battlefield, as though it didn't cost anything in a spectacular display. The impenetrable 5 jia defense line wavered under the fires of battle. Mo knew it was time for him to attack. He unhooked the king's horn from his waist. Chapter 899 Horn. God level. His fingers held the king's horn. Shen power was channeled in. The densely packed bloody Shen glyphs on the king's horn lit up rapidly. A vast and authoritative presence spread outwards with Mo at the center. The 10 gold battle generals at the front jumped. Their expressions almost froze on their faces. This was... The king's horn moved towards his face, and sounded with an exhale. Whoa. The ancient horn sounded on the battlefield. The flashes of lights and the ear-deafening explosions could not suppress this long horn that rose out of the dust of time. Everyone on the battlefield stopped. They seemed to hear something in their body explode. A profound and cryptic glyph lit up in their blood. The power that was hiding in their bloodlines seemed to be awoken by the horn. Submit. Instinctive submission. The invisible presence covered everyone on the battlefield. All the Mo on the battlefield instinctively submitted. Their bodies were out of their control. Their spirits were stunned. The same horn, but the effects on the two sides were different. This strange power that rose from their bloodline would intimidate the spirits, and restrain them if they had the thought to resist. It was unspeakably uncomfortable. Yet those subordinates under Mo's command felt as though a fire had been lit in their bodies. They were filled with endless power. They did not fear any battle. All hail the king. It was the first time Mo blew the king's horn without restraint. Just now, he finally understood what was inside this legendary article of the king. Crafted inside the king's horn was the first Mo king's comprehension about the Mo's bloodline power. The king's horn stimulated the deepest and most basic power of the Mo bloodlines. It was a terrifying power. Zhuo Mo felt a wave of respect. Their Mo bloodline power had no secrets in the eyes of that first Mo king. Zhuo Mo quickly refocused. He noticed the flames that lit up in the eyes of his commanders. Kill. The icy order sounded in every corner of the battlefield. Zhuo Mo appeared at the front of the battle formation. The defense line at Sky Wood Jie wavered under the strong attacks. The battalions of 50,000 attacked furiously without regard for Shin power. Almost all the seal formations and Jinji collapsed in a short amount of time. Gongzi hadn't thought that they would encounter such a fierce attack. The army of 50,000 people seemed to cover the sky. These attacks filled with the energy of death were gray, black, white and green as they rained down. It was the first time that Gongzi encountered such a ferocious attack, that he even had a short moment of dazedness. When he recovered, he immediately noticed the subordinates surrounding him were unconsciously resisting. Gongzi immediately recognized the problem. The pace of battle was being dictated by the enemy. His side was fighting back out of instinct and lacked organization. Reactively responding like this was meaningless. Gongzi was about to shout to stop them when a low horn suddenly sounded over the battlefield. Gongzi seemed to be struck by lightning. The energies in his bodies roiled and he was astounded. His expression changed dramatically. He was a top battle general. Having transformed from a noble young master into a top battle general, his heart was not as fragile as it had once been. He immediately turned to look at his subordinates, and his heart sank. Everywhere he saw, his commanders were dazed, all soulless. A legend suddenly appeared in his mind. King's Horn. That was the King's Horn. He suddenly turned and looked towards the enemy battalions. At this time, he saw the enemy battle formation split open from the middle. The battle formation that had been fighting against them parted to the sides, and a battalion showed themselves through the split. At the very front of the battalion was a Mo wearing a copper mask that looked coldly at him. Kill. Instantly, Gongzi's heart almost stopped beating. But after a short daze he recovered. And then Gongzi paled. So fast. The enemy had almost reached them. Defend. Defend. Gongzi shouted. His handsome face did not have any of his nobility and dignity. He only hoped now that his shout would get his side to focus. What reassured Gongzi slightly was that this battalion he had spent so much effort to build had not completely collapsed under the pressure. They gathered their remaining morale and started to muster a defense. The enemies in his field of view released light. The violent Shen power vibrations caused Gongzi to feel as though it was a Shen power wave heading towards him. The 10 gold battle generals flashed with light that was as thick as fire. But what was the most blinding was Zhuo Mo at the front. Surging Shen power that filled the space around him. The Shen power that contained terrifying power slowly flowed around him. The space around him twisted. People could not see his figure clearly, only the surging Shen power, and a figure like that of a Mo god. A dot of light flew out of that figure. Gongzi's eyes pupils suddenly widened. Not good. Yet that dot of white light immediately flew in front of him. At this time, the dot of light had turned into a patch of blinding white light. As though the sun was thrown at him. They did not have the time to struggle before they were swallowed by the blinding white light that had expanded rapidly. The most crucial 300 li of the entire Sky Wood Jie defense line was consumed by the burning white light. The burning white light silently consumed everything. Only a breath after the expansion of light, did a tsunami of sound swept outwards. The terrifying flows of energy made even the Nether Realm battalions feel as though they were in a storm. Everyone was stunned dumb by this attack, even if this attack had been released from their side. Before this, no one could draw on the Shen power of 50,000 elite. So no one knew what it would be like when the Shen power of 50,000 were gathered together into one attack. Now they knew. 10 breaths later, the light finally faded. What appeared in front of them was an enormous chasm that was 300 li wide. An enormous crack that stretched beyond the horizon. The deep chasm was 30 zhang wide, and the surrounding walls were as smooth as glass. There was nothing in the deep hole. The crack was over 10 li long and seemed bottomless. The shape cut into the ground in a perfectly rounded edge. If they could see into the ground, they would find that the structure of this jia had been completely changed. No one could muster up the bravery to stand against such an attack. The strongest battle general and the strongest battalion of the Mo Marshals Alliance had turned to dust. The remaining Mo Marshals Alliance forces lost the bravery to fight. Even Mo hadn't expected that the Shen power of 50,000 was so terrifying when gathered together. When the amount of Shen power reached a certain level, it would cause a tangible change. The Shen power of 50,000 gathered together was not the same as 20,000 or 30,000. Even he had almost lost control. That attack had been risky. He wouldn't dare to do it again. However, what comforted Mo was that this attack had laid the foundation for the victory over 100 Savage Realm. No one will be able to stop the steps of their advance. Victory was unstoppable. Xue Dong's battalion stealthily appeared at the borders of the 4 minor Diana sects. Soon, the traces of Xue Dong battalion were found. Xue Dong did not fear this. He quickly defeated a few battalions of the 4 minor Diana sects. Yet he quickly realized something was not right. Yang Yuanhao was not at the 4 minor Diana sects. Xue Dong was startled. Yang Yuanhao was not at the 4 minor Diana sects. Then where was he? Xue Dong had not lingered. He had traveled day and night to the 4 minor Diana sects. Xue Dong had wanted to ambush Yang Yuanhao. One-on-one, Xue Dong had enough confidence to win. Mo Cloud C had the advantage in the number of generals, and this was not good for Kunlun. Even though Kunlun had developed some good young battle generals in the past few years, but there was still a big difference between these young people and the present top battle generals. Gongye Xiaorong and Mu Shuang's battalions would only recover after recuperating for a while. In other words, Mo Cloud C's active troops, other than Gong Sun Cha and Bihan, were Yang Yuanhao and Guliang Dao. The plan was first defeat Yang Yuanhao and Guliang Dao to create good conditions for the final battle with Mo Cloud C. Xue Dong had headed for Yang Yuanhao, while Lin Qian had gone alone to deal with Guliang Dao. If Wei Sheng and the others had not returned, Lin Qian's target would have been Gong Sun Chao. However, Wei Sheng and the others did return. Lin Qian was still extremely wary of Wei Sheng. Kunlun had the advantage of strength, and there was no need to take such a risk. Guliang Dao only had a Shuangyu with him, and he was only pseudo-god level. Alone he was not a threat to Lin Qian. First grind away the claws and teeth, then fight. That was Kunlun's strategy. However, when Xue Dong found that Yang Yuanhao was not at the 4 minor Diana sects, his expression changed. This meant that Yang Yuanhao had left the 4 minor Diana sects early. Even the higher-ups of the 4 minor Diana sects were not present. The signs all indicated that when Kunlun had attacked North Tianhuan, Mo Cloud C had started their actions against Kunlun. Xue Dong was not an ordinary person. Almost instantly he guessed Yang Yuanhao's goal. Kunlun. However, after guessing the others' intentions, Xue Dong was not too nervous. If Yang Yuanhao thought that Kunlun's rear was empty, that would be a great mistake. The higher-ups of the 4 minor Diana sects were not here. There was no meaning in sweeping away the 4 minor Diana sects. At this time was most precious. Xue Dong did not hesitate and left the 4 minor Diana sects. Before leaving, he ordered the 5 great Diana sects that had sided with Kunlun to attack the 4 minor Diana sects. Cannon fodder should be dealt with by cannon fodder. A place of this significance was not worthy of his battalion's efforts time. At this time he received a message from Mu Xian. Mu Xian battalion encountered Bihan Sim battalion. Xue Dong's eyes lit up. He was not far from Mu Xian battalion. As long as Mu Xian battalion delayed Bihan for a few days, he would arrive. At that time, he could complete a pincer strategy with Mu Xian battalion against Bihan. Even if Bihan had wings, he would not be able to fly away. He hadn't thought of this. Yang Yuanhao had left, and Bihan came. Xue Dong immediately realized that this was a perfect opportunity to eliminate Bihan's Sim battalion. Chapter 900. Fight to the death. Minan's face was black. He received Shuedong's orders asking him to immediately move closer to Mu Xian to surround Bihan. If they could destroy Sim Battalion, it would be a heavy blow to Mo Cloud Sea. Both Yang Yuan Hao and Gu Liangdao were top battle generals, but in the eyes of Kuan Luan, their threat level, and the threat levels of Gongsun Cha and Bihan were not at the same level. This difference was like the difference between Minan and Shuedong. However, Minan was unable to leave being tied down by Mu Shuang. A few days ago, he had crippled Mu Shuang Battalion. Only slightly more than 1,000 people were left. But this 1,000 with the support of a few normal battalions were forcing Minan to stay. The cruelty and harshness of the battle surpassed Minan's imagination. The others' defense line was in shambles, but they were steadfast. Minan's side would bombard them. But once they stopped, the enemy would rush out of somewhere, leapt at them, and drag them down to die. Even Mu Shuang was fighting at the front lines. The normal battalions they usually dismissed were fearless. Everyone was familiar with each other. Minan's battalion and Mu Shuang's battalion knew each other well. Some were even relatives. Minan was also familiar with Mu Shuang. He knew that the old person on the other side had the desire to die with his enemies. Tian Huan had already died. Minan knew that this was troublesome. Mu Shuang was a just person but was deeply respected in Tian Huan. If he decided to sacrifice himself, countless people would follow him to leap like moths to a flame. As expected, Minan Battalion was scared by the enemy's furiousness and fearlessness. Their morale was low. Mu Shuang's side did not have the strength, but they had the will to die, so they did not fear death. Minan Battalion actually started to decline back when Minan split up Tian Huan. For a battalion, if they did not have strong core beliefs, they could never become a top battalion. Usually it couldn't be seen, but once it came to a battle like this when they needed to put their lives on the line, it would be exposed. When he saw the fear in the eyes of the commanders, Minan's heart turned cold. If Minan did not usually keep strong control on the discipline of the battalion, this battalion would have collapsed already. A hint of confusion flashed through Minan's eyes. Sometimes he would wonder if he was correct in what he did. But soon his gaze cleared up. He took a deep breath. He was also pushed to the precipice as well. If he lost this battle, he would lose everything. All the power and glory would be far from his reach. Minan's gaze flashed with vicious light. He had no choice. You wanted to fight to the death? Mu Shuang, I will satisfy you. Mu Xian was in a terrible state. She hadn't expected that she would encounter Bihan. She had suffered a small loss against Gongye Xiaorong. That had been due to carelessness. Carelessness should not occur in a battle general of her level, but fortunately, the loss had not been large. But when she encountered Bihan Sim Battalion, the pressure on Mu Shuang suddenly increased. From a long time ago, Bihan had entered the ranks of top battle generals, but his ranking had always been low. People's evaluation of Bihan was never high. Offensively strong and weak defensively, skilled in charges, weak in strategy. However, Bihan Sim Battalion was still one of the few undefeated battalions of the world. Gongsun Cha's Vermilion Bird Camp and Bihan Sim Battalion had never lost a fight. The two were both top battle generals, but what they had experienced was completely different. Lil Miss Gongsun had been of low birth, but he had what could be considered a smooth path on this road of becoming a battle general. Even as he became a top battle general, almost everyone's evaluations of Gongsun Cha were strangely similar. This was a great battle general. He had powerful strength, astounding strategic vision, and even more terrifyingly, he had no clear weaknesses. Bihan had once been thought of a young genius on the same level as Jiangxia, but then was buried for many years. He betrayed Xiankong Temple, returned to Hundred Savage Realm, yet what he encountered was disdain and mockery. He couldn't even get the Jinji on his body removed. No one was willing to help him. These people were probably full of regret now. There had once been a great battle general in front of them. Fortunately, he encountered Zhua Mo, and had started to show his great power. But he was still not comparable to Gongsun Cha's light. Bihan only changed people's impressions of him at the Battle of the Mo Marshals Alliance. While the battle had increased people's opinion of him, Sim Battalion had been heavily injured. People once again had a negative outlook on Bihan. An unique genius that endured great hardship was probably the best description of Bihan. However, Bihan still became a famous battle general. Even someone like Mu Xian felt anxious facing him. Having just suffered a loss, Mu Xian battalion had reduced power, and their morale was low. Mu Xian would not care about these things when she was facing other enemies, but this was a terrible matter when she faced Bihan's Sin battalion. When taking over Xixian, Bihan had defeated all the factions with the remnants of Sin battalion, until they didn't know which way was north. And right now, complete. They were complete. Sin battalion had a way of getting reinforcements. Mu Xian's eyes narrowed and swept across Sin battalion. She did not find any new member of Sin battalion. They didn't look any different than before. Bihan did not intend to waste words, and immediately set up an offensive formation. Mu Xian's gaze turned cold, and flush rose on her face. She was wary of Bihan but didn't fear him. Any top battle general would never lack confidence, and the trust that they would win. Otherwise, they would not have gotten to where they were. Her eyes flashing with cold light, Mu Xian shouted, "Team's coiling wind sword formation." Before she finished speaking, the formation changed. The troops had been in organized ranks before, but now they were like strands of swaying sea grass. Each sea grass was giving off faint light. They gathered their Shen power, and waited for the incoming attacks. Bihan looked expressionlessly at the formation in front of him that was filled with killing intent. It was not unexpected to him that Mu Xian had used a battle formation designed to grapple. She was famed for her detailed tactics. Sword formations had many variations and could change quickly. No matter what style the opponent used, they could quickly find a method to subdue them. While his expression was still cold, there seemed to be a ball of fire burning inside Bihan. His blood boiled at being able to fight against a powerful opponent. The arsonist seemed to feel his fighting spirit. It flowed with light as though fire was streaming by. Arsonist had been constantly modified and improved by Gold Crow Camp in these 10 years. It was slightly different from when Mo had forged it. Not just arsonist. Even Sim battalion that surrounded him was filled with fighting spirit. They were connected mentally with Bihan. Bihan felt as though he was in a sea of fire. It was the first time he had encountered this. Come. Sim battalion attack. Skywood Jie being lost announced the defeat of the 5 Jie defense line. There was no meaning in holding the 5 Jie defense line. The Soulless Emotion Temple and Heroes Alliance retreated in panic almost overnight. The morale of Netherrealm rose. All hail the king. Unite the MO. People finally started to dream of the day that the MO would be united after defeating the 5 Jie defense line. All of 100 Savage Realm appeared in front of the Nether King's great army. Mo did not hesitate, and allowed the army to move in. The factions along the way surrendered as they arrived. One reason was because the Netherrealm army was truly powerful, and the other was one that Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry about: the King's Horn. The King's Horn was something from the legends, and these legends all resurfaced now. All the rumors said that the Nether King was likely to be the king to next unite the MO. It came to the point that whenever they came to a place, an MO and the others would ask Mo to blow the King's Horn. With Mo's Shen power, when the King's Horn was blown, the entire Jie would hear it. Mo gaped at the effectiveness of this move. If he blew the King's Horn on the first day, then on the second waves of faction leaders would come in to willingly surrender. There was nothing more effective than this move. Mo used this method to quickly take over the territory of the Mo Marshals Alliance. He had the upper hand, and taking over the territory meant that he was connected to Mo Cloud Sea. This allowed Mo to sigh in relief. What was left was only the Heroes Alliance and the Mo Shen Temple. The Heroes Alliance was not strong, and they were only a loose organization. Mo placed no importance on it. The one that could be an obstacle to the army was the Mo Shen Temple. The Mo Shen Temple wasn't just the largest and the strongest faction. The rule of the Mo Shen Temple was strong. Mo's advance speed was not fast. While he was in a hurry, he did not want any accidents to happen at the rear. Only after taking over all of the Mo Marshals Alliance's territory did Mo decided to speed up. At this time, Liang Wei sent a message back. An MO was reliable and had the authority, so he was left with Zhuimo. If he was in charge, it would save great trouble for Zhuimo. Liang Wei was sensitive and reactive, clever and suitable for being leading the attack. As expected, Liang Wei's results were outstanding. Other than leading the King's Horn, he also led 100,000 troops. They were extremely ferocious and headed directly for Heroes Alliance. At this time, Heroes Alliance had not given up and appeared as though they wanted to fight to the death. Yet Liang Wei executed a feint maneuver. He left the army camp secretly and led the King's Horn to move through the night to suddenly appear at the flanks of the enemy's defense line. A perfect Liang Wei-style ambush. The Heroes Alliance was alarmed and panicked. They moved their battalions to surround the King's Horn. The astounding capabilities of the King's Horn were on display in this battle. They fought and moved. They were at ease in front of battalions that outnumbered them by dozens of times. They defeated 7 large battalions in succession. Liang Wei pulling around caused the defense line of the Heroes Alliance to weaken. The 100,000 army that had been waiting immediately attacked on all fronts. The Heroes Alliance defense line immediately crumbled. Afterwards, Liang Wei seemed to suddenly appear out of the mist heading for the core army of the Heroes Alliance. The King's Horn seemed to be untouchable. Liang Wei captured all the higher-ranking members of the Heroes Alliance. 3 days later, the Heroes Alliance surrendered. The battle made Liang Wei famous. Chapter 901. How have you been? Yu Qinlai stood respectfully. After being in power for 10 years, Ming Yuyi seemed to be a different person. She was still beautiful, but there was authority at her brow, and that pair of spirited eyes had become as deep as the ocean. No one cared about her age any longer. Everyone was fearful in front of her, and didn't dare to breathe. Over the last 10 years, Ming Yuyi had successfully eliminated her political enemies. There was only one voice in the Yao. The Council of Elders had no power. All of the important departments and elite battalions were in her control. After reading the reports, Ming Yuyi's brow furrowed. Liang Wei. She had a reminiscing expression. This name clearly stirred many of her memories. Liang Wei of the Ice Frost Corps? She had some recollection about this name. He was a silver battle general that had accomplished a great victory in the war against Kuan-Luan. Then he had been relieved of his duties and sent home. This had been an example of corruption she had used to attack the Council of Elders, and it had created some big waves. Yes. Yu Qinlai said cleanly but certainly. How did he get to Nether Realm? Don't know. Yu Qinlai said calmly. Should this be investigated? There was no flaw to be seen on his face. While he had buried the matter that he had interacted with Liang Wei in the past, he had not relaxed. As he hid in the shadows for long and longer, he became even more careful. He would not leave behind this one opening. Therefore, Yu Qinlai promoted all the subordinates that had participated in that meeting, and gave them more power. In this past decade, the biggest mission carried out was the cleanse. Yu Qinlai was the sharpest blade in Ming Yuyi's hands, and his subordinates naturally had to participate in these missions. Promotion meant that they needed to take harder and riskier missions. Therefore, these people slowly decreased in number. Liang Wei had been politically silent for 10 years, and these people had forgotten him long ago. These people would never have thought that the matter of Liang Wei was the cause of their deaths. Because they had died for the public good, their families were taken care of. They could enter the best Yaoart houses, and they could get steady jobs. Violent times was the best concealment. No one noticed the systematic sacrifice of these people. Even these people did not detect it. Too many people had been sacrificed in these 10 years. Even Yu Qinlai had been heavily wounded multiple times, and almost died a few times. Yu Qinlai rejoiced at his past cautiousness. If any of the people were still alive, he would be in trouble. If his past subordinates were still here, and Liang Wei suddenly appeared under the command of the Nether King, everyone would find it strange. Ming Yuyi did not respond and sighed in regret. I misjudged. In the past, I thought that he was just an average silver battle general not worthy of recruitment. I hadn't thought that his talent would rival Mi Su. I missed recruiting such a famed general. It is a great mistake. Also, as a Yao, he leads a MO battalion. It seems that us Yao will also have a battle general like Bi Han. Ming Yuyi was filled with regret. Based on Liang Wei's status in the past, she only needed to show some attention, and he would be faithful. 1,000 soldiers was easy to obtain, one general was hard to find, especially a general like this. In this battle, Liang Wei formally made it into the ranks of top battle generals. Shaking her head, Ming Yuyi threw away her vexation. How is the fighting between Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea? The two have started an all-out war. Yu Qinlai paid extra attention to Mo Cloud Sea and knew it well. From the intelligence reports we have received, the two sides have not prepared for the final battle. Mo Cloud Sea's intentions at the beginning was to use North Tianhuan as a lure to attract Kunlun, so they could ambush from the back and expend Kunlun's military power. Kunlun wanted to first take Tianhuan and get rid of weaknesses as it strengthened their holdings, and then use the 4 minor Diana sects or Guliangdao as a target to initiate the final fight with Mo Cloud Sea. Ming Yi nodded. Li Xian'er's move was beautiful. Mo Cloud Sea had to accept her proposal, and Kunlun had to fight. She showed a smile. The two titans will fight for a long time. We need to take this chance to rest and recover. When both sides are wounded, it will be the time for my Yao to rise. The Yao who had just recovered slightly from the cleanse could not move. No one knew better than Ming Yuyi how much the Yao had exhausted themselves in the 10 years of internal conflict. In her view, the internal fighting in the Xiuzha and the Mo world was a blessing from the heavens for the Yao to recover. Darren is wise, Yu Qinlai said with an expression of agreement. Inside he smirked coldly. He had gotten in contact with Pu. While Pu had not said it, he could hear from Pu's tone that Pu had other plans. Yu Qinlai was extremely smart, and he had worked in the intelligence field for many years. He was skilled in finding the truth from hints. Liang Wei had appeared in the command of the Nether King. Thinking about Pu's certainty, the return of Wei Sheng and the others to Mo Cloud Sea, and Zhuo Mo's impeding return, he reached an absurd conclusion. The Nether King was possibly Zhuo Mo. In reality, he frightened himself with his conclusion. But he quickly calmed down. If this was true, then Zhuo Mo was unprecedentedly powerful. This was a nightmare to the other factions. In his view, the Mo Shen Temple could not withstand for long. The difference in power was too great. The Mo uniting could not be stopped. If his guess was true, once Zhuo Mo defeated Mo Shen Temple, he would possess 100 Savage Realm, Nether Realm, and Mo Cloud Sea. He would become the strongest in the world. The only chance to resist would be for the Yao and Kunlun to ally together. But now Ming Yuyi decided to wait until the two sides finished fighting. Yu Qinlai smirked inside. Once Zhuo Mo finished uniting the Mo, he would be stronger than Kunlun. More importantly, Kunlun would never imagine that the Nether King was the king of Mo Cloud Sea. With Zhuo Mo's plans, Kunlun would suffer a great loss. Yu Qinlai understood Pu well. With Pu's style he might not move, but if he did it would be a fatal blow. He would not give Kunlun a chance to come back. At that time, would the Yao be a match for Zhuo Mo? No one had expected that after all the fighting, the most outstanding general under the Nether King's command was not an Mo but Liang Wei. In the past, everyone thought that the Nether King's weakness was that he had the soldiers but lacked capable generals. This lack of generals referred to the top-ranked battle generals. 100 Savage Realm had always been fighting, and the battalions had been reduced, but they had a group of top battle generals. Mo Shen Temple, the Mo Marshals Alliance and Heroes Alliance all had top battle generals. While they were much weaker than the Xiuzha Alliance, they were much stronger than the Nether Realm. Nether Realm had been relatively peaceful, especially after the Nether Realm had been united. There had been no more fighting. Without the experience of battle, it was difficult for top battle generals to mature, even for large sects like Kunlun with their outstanding battle general training systems and enormous number of battle generals. A true top battle general would only come out of battle. Now Nether King's shortcoming was made up. Other than Liang Wei's appearance out of nowhere, there was now Qi Xing, formerly of the Heroes Alliance. Qi Xing was a large reason why the Heroes Alliance was able to survive while being squeezed between the Mo Shen Temple and the Mo Marshals Alliance. He was the most outstanding battle general of the Heroes Alliance, and the only top battle general the Heroes Alliance had. But Qi Xing had terrible luck. Liang Wei cleverly avoided his position and pushed into the core of Heroes Alliance. He had immediately recognized the situation and hurried back to save the higher-ups, but he was a step late. All of the Heroes Alliance higher-ups had surrendered. He didn't even have the time to fight back, he could only surrender. Qi Xing was much weaker as a warrior compared to an MO. This could be seen from the scale of the two battalions. With Qi Xing's strength, he could only lead 6,000 elites. But an MO could easily lead 10,000 without a problem. While in terms of strategic ability and perception, an MO was lacking. Zhuo Mo selected the elite of each battalion for Qi Xing to assemble a troop from. In Zhuo Mo's view, top-tier battle generals need top-tier battalions. Qi Xing wasn't bad, but his original battalion wasn't great. What Zhuo Mo had the most of right now were battalions. Liang Wei had accomplished a great victory in capturing all the higher-ups of Heroes Alliance. The collective surrender of Heroes Alliance mean the number of battalions under Zhuo Mo swelled again. So many battalions. There definitely were enough to create a top battalions for Qi Xing. He did not worry about Qi Xing. He believed that Qi Xing was not so dumb. Right now he had the two spears, Liang Wei and Qi Xing. He also had an MO in charge, the experienced and reliable general. There almost wasn't anything for him to do. On the other side, all the Jies under the rule of the Mo Sheng Temple moved. The development of the war robbed people of hope. The advancement of the Nether King's army was almost unimaginably fast. Once Heroes Alliance had surrendered, it left Mo Shen Temple to fight alone. They had no place to retreat. The Mo Shen Temple had expanded greatly in the past years, and had conquered almost half of 100 Savage Realm. It was still the largest faction of 100 Savage Realm. Of the 5 MO gods, there were top experts and top battle generals. However, they were lacking compared to the Nether King. Especially after the god-level Nether King's attack on Skywood Jia shook the world. People had seen the strength of a god level through the battle at Nether King River. However, experiencing it in person was completely different. An MO was the main commander, Liang Wei and Qi Xing were the second-in-commands. A three-pronged attack formed. An MO was not the strongest, but he was reliable, and he had the respect of the troops. Zhuo Mo did not worry with him in charge of the army. Nothing more needed to be said of Liang Wei. He was the rising star of the moment. Zhuo Mo also put great hopes on Qi Xing. He wanted to see Qi Xing's abilities. Zhuo Mo was organizing the territories of 100 Savage Realm they had conquered. He needed to first set up the political structure before he would be able to attack the Mo Shen Temple, without any worries. Once they swept the Mo Shen Temple away, it was time for them to turn and pincer Kunlun. By that time, there would be no time to deal with all of this. The battle against Kunlun might continued for a long time. At that time, a steady rear was important. Also, managing 100 Savage Realm was not suitable for the MO of Nether Realm to do. He needed the MO of 100 Savage Realm. Only then would he stabilize 100 Savage Realm as quickly as possible. Zhuo Mo had met the higher-ups of Heroes Alliance, but he didn't have a good feeling about them. Those people were too average in ability, and would not able to fulfill their duties to his satisfaction. Others thought that Zhuo Mo had no one to use, but didn't know that Zhuo Mo had selected candidates a long time ago. He thought back to the time at Great Peace City with a reminiscing expression on his face. Princess Xia. The Lan brothers, I wonder how have you been? Chapter 902. The final battle of the strongest and god-level Shuedong battalion was ordered to a sudden stop. There was a battalion waiting silently ahead of them. Shuedong's pupils suddenly contracted. Vermilion Bird Camp. After hearing of Beihan and Xin Battalion's actions, Shuedong was not too surprised. It was confirmed the 4 minor Diana sects and Mo Cloud Sea had been in cahoots for a long time. His position and been exposed. How could Lil Miss, with his abilities, not guess his target? A hint of smile suddenly appeared on the corner of Shuedong's lips. Fighting spirit burned in his eyes. He had been anticipating this battle for a long time. Gongsun Lil Miss. Vermilion Bird Camp. An undefeated battle general. An undefeated battalion. Only a person like this qualified to be his opponent. In Shuedong's eyes, Gongsun Cha was the only one that could be his opponent. He never thought of Bihan or people like Yang Yuan Hao and Guliang Dao as his equals. There was only one person that could be discussed together with him, Gongsun Cha, the strongest battle general of Mo Cloud Sea. Lil Miss that smiled beautifully as he caused the world to feel terror. Shuedong had studied Gongsun Cha before. The more he studied him, the more admiration he felt. Shuedong thought that he had reached the epitome of what it was to be a battle general. While he had not reached the state that he would be undefeatable, there had never been a battalion that actually made him feel threatened. Even Guliang Dao, the tiger of Xixian, had been crippled by him. If Gongsun Cha had not come with help in time, Guliang Dao wouldn't even had the chance to flee. Shuedong's opinion of Gongsun Cha was extremely high. Gongsun Cha was like him, they didn't have clear weaknesses. Just like him, Gongsun Cha was skilled in grabbing people's weaknesses. Just like him, Gongsun Cha could change his style as he willed. The only thing different was the style of fighting. Shuedong's style was domineering and brutal like a crushing hammer. Gongsun Cha's style was sharp and flexible like a razor-sharp blade that stripped flesh from bone with each strike. In terms of training new talents, Shuedong thought that he was far behind Gongsun Cha. Gongsun Cha trained one batch after another of first-class battle generals. These battle generals were the core of Mo Cloud Sea's strength. Internally, even Kuan-Luan thought that the skill level of Kuan-Lun's battle generals were not as good as Mo Cloud Sea. In these last 10 years, other than fighting, Shuedong invested almost all of his extra time into training new people. Once he thought of Gongsun Cha as his rival, the competitive Shuedong could not allow himself to fall behind Gongsun Cha in any field. The appearance of new talented generals in Kuan-Luan these past years were in part due to Shuedong's efforts. However, Shuedong still felt they could not compare to Mo Cloud Sea's Ma Fan and the others. This displeased him. He always anticipated having a true battle with Gongsun Cha. He hadn't thought that the chance to arrange the battle would come so soon. Shuedong stepped out. Almost as though they had a pre-arranged agreement, Gongsun Cha also came to the front of his troops. He saw the bashful Gongsun Cha. Even though Shuedong had seen Gongsun Cha in the mirages before, he still stilled. This guy opposite him was like a neighbor's boy filled with sunshine and warmth. There was no killing energy at all. Shuedong couldn't connect him with that undefeatable battle general, whose enemies fled at the sound of his name. This one is Shuedong, greetings to Mr. Gongsun. Shuedong bowed. Mr. Shui is too polite. Gongsun Cha's smile became even more bashful. Shuedong would not be fooled by Gongsun Cha's smile, but he still felt a strange sense of conflict. He quickly focused and said loudly, I had originally thought that the battle between us will occur after Misters were returned. I hadn't expected to meet so soon. It seems the battle between you and I is fated. It's not fate. Gongsun Cha still had the smile, but his words were as sharp as knives. It's strategy. Shuedong's heart shook, but his expression did not change. He smiled amusedly. Strategy, I like the term. As long as Mr. Shui likes it. Gongsun Cha gave a harmless smile. If Mr. Shui likes it, I am even more confident. Ah, your Xixiang is a great genius, and Mr. Shui is also an invincible battle general. It would be a pity if either of you fall. Haha. Shuedong roared with laughter. Who in the world is eldest Xixiang's match? Who is my match? The words were arrogant, but the confidence in the tone caused people to believe the words. Really? Gongsun Cha's smile was even more bashful. Does Mr. Shui think that God level is invincible? Does Mr. Shui think that there is only a Lin Qian in the world? Mr. Shui really underestimates the heroes of the world. Shuedong's heart jumped and his eyes narrowed. However, he did not feel any fear. He laughed and said, A great battle is about to start. Why play these little mind games? Let's fight. I've been waiting for this fight for a long time. Mr. Shui is right. The corners of Gongsun Cha's mouth curved up sharply like blades. The warm and bashful smile immediately filled with killing intent. Pity war, it is not the same as before. Vermilion Bird Camp against Shuedong Battalion. The two strongest battle generals of the world, the two strongest battalions, fight. Wei Sheng was extremely fast. He was urgently flying at full speed. His target was Lin Qian. Gong Sun Cha was right. War had changed. The appearance of god-level experts changed the state of war. In the past, no matter how strong the strongest was, they could not change the balance of war by themselves. This situation was transformed as god-level appeared. It would not be difficult for a god level to take the head of the enemy leader among the tens of thousands of soldiers. A god level was strong enough they did not fear stepping deep into the enemy's territory. Take the general's head. This terrifying tactic could deeply change the state of war. Kunlun had also found the power of this tactic. According to their intelligence, Lin Qian had split up from Shuedong a long time ago, and his whereabouts were unknown. Lin Qian's goal was either Guliang Dao or Yang Yuan Hao. Neither Guliang Dao nor Yang Yuan Hao could stop Lin Qian. They didn't have god-level fighters under their command. Also, the loss of either Guliang Dao or Yang Yuan Hao and their battalions would be a great loss to Mo Cloudsea's faction. Mo Cloudsea had repeatedly discussed and studied. The conclusion they reached was that god levels were unsolvable at this time. This imbalance would only be temporary, lasting about 10 years at maximum. 10 years later, the skill level of the battalions would increase by 2 levels, and there would be more pseudo-god levels. 5 pseudo-god levels would be enough to stop a god level. But that time, war would enter a new equilibrium. God-level experts would not be undefeatable, and the use of battle generals would once again be viable. Top battle generals like Guliang Dao and Yang Yuan Hao could not be trained during this time. In these 10 years, whoever possessed god-level experts, who possessed the most god-level experts would have the advantage. On the way, Wei Sheng had been wondering who Lin Qian's target was. Yang Yuan Hao or Guliang Dao. Thinking while traveling, Wei Sheng thought the probability of Guliang Dao was higher. Guliang Dao and Yang Yuan Hao were about the same in strength, but among their factions, Guliang Dao clearly had the higher status. Also, Guliang Dao's relationship to Mo Cloudsea was closer than Yang Yuan Hao. The benefits to killing Guliang Dao was greater than killing Yang Yuan Hao. Also, Guliang Dao had marched deeper into Kunlun territory. Guliang Dao had been filled with the desire for revenge after being defeated by Shuedong. This meant that he had invaded faster than Yang Yuan Hao had. This meant that it was easier for Lin Qian to find them. Lin Qian looked at Guliang Dao battalion before him. In his eyes, those people were like ants. Shuangyu was covered in wounds. His face was ashen. His right arm had been severed by Lin Qian, yet he had no intentions of stemming the bleeding. He looked upwards at the figure in the sky. Lin Qian stood holding his sword, the white robes fluttering in the wind. He was outside the reach of the mortal realm. Guliang Dao's battalion was furiously attacking. The light of countless spells flew into the sky, yet Lin Qian did not budge. The light shield around him did not shudder at all. The rain of attacks didn't even cause a ripple on the surface. Surrender, Guliang Dao. I feed no meaning in needless killing. Lin Qian's cool voice came from the sky. Guliang Dao's spirits were extinguished. He looked at the sky. Was this a god-level expert? It was the first time he felt completely powerless. Even when he had lost to Shuedong last time, he had not been so discouraged. This kind of discouragement was not because of Lin Qian's strength, but because he suddenly found that the battalion was not the strongest power in the world any longer. What would rule the world would be the god level. Big brother. A hoarse voice suddenly called out. Guliang Dao turned around. It was Shuangyu. His eyes suddenly showed a hint of warmth. As he looked at this brother that had followed him, he suddenly calmed down. Shuangyu, do you regret it? Regret? Shuangyu suddenly laughed. Big brother, why would you ask this? No one regrets this. God level is really strong. Guliang Dao looked into the sky and lamented. Brothers will avenge us. Shuangyu had an expression of certainty. You are right. Guliang Dao suddenly showed a smile and said with bravado. Then let us find out today, just how strong a god-level expert is. Guliang Dao motioned for the battalion to stop attacking. The sky full of lights disappeared. Everyone looked towards their commander. The cloud over Guliang Dao was swept away. He raised his arm, his expression full of murderousness, his spirit brimming. He shouted, "Fight to the death! To the death!" Everyone shouted, "To the death!" Guliang Dao roared like a tiger, his hair standing on end. "To the death!" What answered him were the even stronger shouts from the battalion. "To the death!" Guliang Dao shouted with all of his strength. Even his voice had become his hoarse, but each person could clearly feel his intent to die. "To the death! To the death! To the death!" The soul-shaking shouts caused their fighting spirit to consume them like fire. There was no terror, no retreat, only stepping towards their deaths. "Kill!" Guliang Dao pointed his long blade into the sky. "Kill!" The one-armed Shuangye Shen power burned furiously. His usually gentle features were twisted. He was like a ball of fire that charged with the will to die towards that figure in the sky, the one that seemed to be above the world. "Kill!" The battalion charged like an uncontrolled sea of fire towards Lin Qian in the sky. Lin Qian changed expression but sighed softly. The immemorial Shen sword shook and a sharp light suddenly formed. At the very front, Shuangyu was immediately pieced by the light. Then this tiny light then cleaved through the raging Guliang Dao battalion. A hole the size of a fist appeared in Guliang Dao's chest. Lin Qian's blow penetrated through the entire battalion. Yet Guliang Dao still wore a smile. Lin Qian's expression suddenly changed. Chapter 903. In the name of eldest Shi Xiang, the entire battalion in front of Lin Qian instantly exploded. The exploding Shen power formed a wild sea that swallowed up Lin Qian. One hand holding tightly onto the immemorial sword, Lin Qian was protected behind the shield of light. He was filled with regret. A famed general had died so simply. Wanting to take him down as well? Pity. Suddenly, Lin Qian seemed to detect something. Almost at the same time, a great power collided with his light shield. The light shield immediately shattered. This was Shuangye's attack before his death. The moment the shield of light shattered, Lin Qian's immemorial shook and formed a round barrier to protect him. Pop pop pop. The surging power seemed to find a target and flooded over. Each wave of power was insignificant to Lin Qian, but they came too quickly and there were too many. The sword circle shattered. Lin Qian gave a muffled grunt. Using this wave of power, he broke free of the wild ocean of power. Having gotten free, Lin Qian looked from afar at the ocean of Shen power. He watched as it gradually calmed, and the ripples of power faded in the air. Such an intense opponent. Lin Qian sighed inwardly. Guliang Dao's last attack used the entirety of his skill at controlling battle formations. He used the battle formation and astounding technique in control to self-destruct the entire battalion all at once. This kind of thing was never heard of before. Even Lin Qian had to admit that this was an opponent worthy of respect. It was the first time he was wounded after entering God level. The wound was not serious. He would heal after resting for a few days. Lin Qian was not concerned. It was really profitable to pay this small price for destroying a top battle general and a top battalion. A pity that Yang Yuanhao was much more cunning and was harder to find. If Guliang Dao's desire for revenge hadn't been so strong, Kunlun would not have cornered him so easily. The impact of Guliang Dao's death would be as a huge one for Mo Cloud C. When he thought of this, Lin Qian was satisfied. At this time, a howling came from afar. The howling seemed to contain the faint tinge of a dragon's presence. Lin Qian looked in the direction of the howl. The horizon seemed to be dyed in red, and was unspeakably terrifying. A figure seemed to draw a bloody arc across the sky, and was charging over at astonishing speed. The figure suddenly disappeared from view. In the next moment, an upright figure carrying a sword appeared in front of Lin Qian. Lin Qian's pupils suddenly contracted. Wei Sheng. What caused Lin Qian's heart to sink was that other than the faint presence of dragon, Wei Sheng had the same presence as he did. Lin Qian knew what this meant. God level. Wei Sheng was God level. Waves formed inside his mind. In that battle of the Central Plains, he had seen with his own eyes how Wei Sheng had burned Shen power to fight. He knew what the consequences of burning Shen power were. Wei Sheng burning Shen power back then at his power level should have died. Even if he managed to survive, he would be crippled. How? How could he have entered God level? A hint of sorrow flashed through Wei Sheng's eyes. He had come a step too late. The remnants of Shen power remnants here revealed what that just happened. But when Wei Sheng's gaze landed on Lin Qian's face, it turned to steely determination. Long time no see, Brother Wei. Lin Qian was warm and polite. I hadn't thought that Brother Wei had entered God level as well. Brother Wei has finally found the sword path of your heart. As expected of us, Sword Xiao. Wei Sheng shook his head. The sword I practice is not the same as yours. Yes. Lin Qian nodded. It is hard to say who is right or wrong on the path of the sword. However, we can determine who is strong or weak. Wei Sheng, do you dare to fight me in the name of the sword? Lin Qian pointed his sword at Wei Sheng, his white robes flying, his presence intimidating. If it was anyone else, I would give them the chance for a fair fight. But the fight between you and I is not a study of our paths of the sword. It is a matter of vengeance. Wei Sheng did not avoid Lin Qian's gaze and said honestly, I once swore a sword oath to destroy Kunlun for Wukong. Today one of us will die. Wei Sheng's tone was like the hum of a sword, decisive and intimidating. The god-killing blood sword in his hand shrieked as it pointed at Lin Qian. Lin Qian knew that his attempted scheme had failed. He had just been lightly wounded. He would not fear the disadvantage if it was any other person. But he hadn't expected that Wei Sheng was also god level. This seemingly insignificant wound could prove to be fatal in a battle between god-level experts. He had originally wanted to arouse Wei Sheng's devotion to the sword and take advantage, attack his psyche. He had thought that Wei Sheng would fall for it. Even if he didn't, it would leave behind a shadow in his herd because he had won unfairly. He hadn't thought that Wei Sheng was honest and true to himself. A person like this could not be affected by simple words. The unpredictable consequences of his past machinations had created such a great enemy in Mo Cloud Sea. One could only say that fate was fickle. Lin Qian threw away his stray thoughts. While he was at a disadvantage, he was not scared. He smiled. All right. As Kunlun's eldest Xixiang and Wukong eldest Xixiang, then in the name of eldest Xixiang, let's settle this. Peerless Kunlun and that rural little sect Wukong sword sect were finally placed on equal ground for the first time by the words from Lin Qian's mouth. Wei Sheng's expression was normal, but his heart was affected. Teachers and sect, this disciple's Wei Sheng finally got this chance. The god-killing blood sword in Wei Sheng's hand seemed to feel Wei Sheng's fury, sorrow, and excitement. It vibrated, and the entire sky turned bloody red. The sky roiled, and the rampaging killing intent filled the world. The grass and trees on the ground quickly withered. The rivers ran red. Fissures opened on the ground, and there seemed to be blood flowing out. The entire Jia seemed to become a hellish world of blood. The immemorial sword trembled violently in Lin Qian's hand. Sharp peerless sword essences met in the air and exploded. The threads of bloody energy would be torn apart when they got close to Lin Qian. Feeling the fighting spirit of the immemorial sword in his hand, Lin Qian bowed his head and said with unusual determination, Master, this disciple will not shame the name of Kunlun. Raising his head, Lin Qian's pupils turned into a metallic blue. The sharp killing intent became slightly more grave. The red and the blue Shen swords faced off like fated enemies. Bihan looked indifferently at the dazzling variations of Mu Xian Battalion's formations as though it did not matter. He could see the other's intentions. Mu Xian wanted to delay him until the reinforcements came. Pity, if Mu Xian knew that Shuedong was being delayed by Gong Suncha and Minan had suffered heavy fatalities, would she still act this way? Bihan's gaze swept across the bodies of Sin Battalion. Those faces that were so similar. He thought of the memorial tablets placed neatly on the altars in Resting Island. No tablet was missing. All of the Sin Battalion members were represented there. The present Sin Battalion was not the Sin Battalion of the past. The new Sin Battalion possessed complete souls. From when they were born, they were mentally connected to Bihan. They were closer to Mo steeds than puppets, but they kept the battle instincts of the previous Sin Battalion members. Almost all of Mo Cloud Sea Shun crystals had been spent on recreating Sin Battalion. This Sim battalion was most likely the most expensive battalion in the world. When the last memorial tablet was placed, the last chain on Bihan's heart was shattered. The new Sim battalion caused him to feel joy and hope as though he was a child. The past Sim battalion had been weighed down by an aura of death. The present Sim battalion brimmed with life. He had stepped through the border of gray and hopelessness to touch the warmth of sunshine. They had watched him study tactics under the dim lantern light in the lonely and cold days at Xiankong Temple. They had listened to him mumble to himself. No matter how difficult or hard, they had never left him. Rest. Please do not worry about me. A hint of warmth flashed through Bihan's eyes. He raised his head, his eyes turning icy again. Wuxia battalion changed formations at an astounding rate, but it didn't cause a ripple in his mind. Wuxia battalion was the most varied battalion he had ever seen. They were like a puddle of water that could change formation to fit the situation as they wished. If an ordinary battalion encountered an enemy like this, they would find it troublesome. But for Bihan, he could see their weakness at a glance. Wuxia battalion pursued variation, but they were much less skilled in terms of both defensive and offensive power. Complex variations that lacked power were just decorative flourishes at his level. Bihan took a deep breath. Wisps of flame flew out of every member of Sim battalion. Thousands of wisps of flame flew, rising into the sky in a beautiful display. Arsonist lit up. The flames quickly entered Bihan's body. The layers of flames flowed along the surface of the Shen device, and feathers made of fire grew freely. The icy blue emo matrix at his neck flashed with eerie light. Wuxia's expression changed slightly. Emo fighting methods. She suddenly remembered that Bihan was a battle general skilled at fighting in both Xiuzha and Emo styles. Sim battalion was also the only battalion that could fight in both styles. Wuxia also knew the strengths and weaknesses of her battalion. She did not fear the unreasonable attacks of the Emo. In her view, the Emo fighting tactics were savage, lacked technique, and ultimately were all the same. She did not fear ordinary Emo battle generals. While one person with strength could defeat 10 with skill, the battle style that focused on variation relied on softness to subdue hardness. In terms of battle formation transformations, Wuxia believed that her battalion was at the top. No battalion was perfect. While surrounded by fire, Bihan's heart was as cold as ice. His obsessive cold demeanor meant that he was always clear-minded no matter the situation. The battle formation changed again. Threads of sword energies were like an enormous whirlpool. Any strong attacks would be skinned by these sword energies until they disappeared. Pity, many enemies would forgot that before the battle with the Emo martial alliance's Shang Yushang, Bihan had never relied on Emo fighting tactics to become a top battle general. Battle formation variations were also one of the weapons that Bihan was skilled in. Bihan's gaze was completely cold, his lips curving icily. Having let go of his burdens, Bihan was still obsessive, still mad, but was also calmer. He reached out and pointed in the air at the center of the sword energy whirlpool. The surging power exploded at his fingertip. A blinding red light fell like a comet towards the center of Wuxia's battalion. It did not stop there. The other fingers on Bihan's hand tapped in the air, as though he was playing an instrument. For even smaller red dots of light flew towards the corners of the whirlpool, positioning themselves in a formation. 5-star formation break. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.